Good morning. It is 6:30, and boy, oh boy, are we broadcasting from, well, part of the belly of the beast. It is, of course, Wednesday. It is March 11th, 2020. Right now, it is 47 degrees, on its way to 55 today. Few clouds. We'll get back with the weather, but of course, you know, this morning, the real story is COVID-19. Good morning once again. It is 47, few clouds in the sky on this Wednesday, March 11th. It is an interesting day here in New Rochelle. As you know, the National Guard heads to New Rochelle today for a coronavirus containment area. A horse trainer with Westchester ties in New Jersey has died. Yonkers Raceway employee, by the way. That is his connection. The state issues a ban on public gatherings within 1 mile of this radius. The New Rochelle Superintendent of Schools says students will learn even though many schools will be closed today. Playoff games in college are canceled. Joe Biden won handily last night in the, well, let's call it Super Tuesday 2. But here we are in New Rochelle in a very quiet train station at 6:33 in the morning. Welcome to Radio Westchester. I'm Bob Marrone. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. It's an interesting day in the neighborhood. Stay with us. A lot to talk about. First, we take a look at the weather, and the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. Well, the weather will be nice today, even if people are a little on edge, and hopefully we can help to relax you a little bit this morning. At any rate, the forecast is this: mostly cloudy skies after morning sunshine gives way. It'll be high around 55 today. And it is a nice day. Tonight, partly cloudy and chilly with lows around 36. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy with a few spotty evening rain showers, highs around 53. And on into Friday, mostly cloudy with scattered periods of rain showers. Sorry about that. Some breaks of sun, warmer with highs around 65. And it should dry out by the afternoon. And as you head into your weekend, sunny and breezy on Saturday, 53 degrees. Okay, it is 6:34. Let's get into those stories today. Now, before we even do this, there's so much going on. And here in New Rochelle, it's very quiet at the train station. A while ago, there was me, a couple of people there, getting coffee. Yes, getting coffee. I had it made this morning. I have a little machine here, and I make more, but the clerk was behind the counter. The man that's here eats in every morning, works a lot of hours, runs the snack bar. The guard was there in his station at the information desk. A few people in the station. I suspect there will be more. Yesterday, it seemed like maybe we had half a number of people last night at the radio station, different news teams showing up. I guess the train station is as good as any place to act as the center of the city, in as much as the closed area, the partitioned area now of the city, is up in the north end, some 2 miles from the radio station, from here where we are at the train station. So let's get into it. But folks, I think the governor, the county executive, who will be with us at 7:30 this morning, we have others on call to come on in. We're going to open up the phones for a little while and see what you think about all of it. But I'm going to put a little bit of stake in the ground as we get into the news. It is now 6:36. I think when you look at how most Americans believe and think and react when they hear the National Guard is called in, they think of local insurrection, riots, fires, natural disasters, things of that ilk, floods, etc., earthquakes. I think it raises a specter and creates an image that goes over, not over a line of propriety, but over a line of, wow, we ought to really be concerned now. And I guess the governor had no choice, because I think it's only fair to say the governor has been handling this pretty well, and George Latimer, the county executive, will speak to that in a little while. But the specter of the National Guard coming in here has probably put a more ominous face on reality than we would like, only in the sense that it's frightened a lot of people. It's certainly frightened people who are not living here in New Rochelle or working here in New Rochelle. And even so, those of us who work here or live here, it's putting the specter on us. Put a little glowing dot on our chests from New Rochelle, as if we're radioactive somehow. A lot of us aren't going to be welcome at our jobs today, down in the city or elsewhere, or at least at an initial reaction. Some of us aren't going to be welcome at family homes around the region or elsewhere. And the big change was the National Guard. Now, again, all of the things, it's like any label you put on something. I remember when my daughter was young and we were skating together. Yes, my daughter played a little hockey with me. It's pretty good. Good hands. She fell. Now, not playing hockey, not running around. She went to get a drink of water, get a snack, a refreshment. She fell of her own accord. Didn't even have hockey gloves on at the time, and broke her wrist. And we're sitting there, and I'm looking at her arm, and she says, "My God, what if it's broken?" And then I had this bit of insight. Well, forget the words or the label, it's broken. If it's broken, well, it is, and you now know what the worst of it is, except, of course, when they said it. So don't get all upset over the word broken, Christine. And that is what we're dealing with in New Rochelle this morning. The National Guard, quarantine. Well, things are as they were before that declaration is made, and things are what they are. And this is not to minimize this problem. The government, the powers that be, good practice, solid practice requires that we make every precaution to keep this thing from spreading as, I don't want to say non-fatal, but as minimally fatal that this disease is. So this is just my way of saying, as we get into this, some of these stories sound ominous. And just to keep it in perspective, we're here at the train station, and you're listening to Radio Westchester Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. On this 11th of March, 2020, as we deal with the coronavirus. Now, let's get into some of the headlines and some of the stories and get busy. And after we do that, we'll open up the phones for a while, and we'll give out 2 different numbers today and see how you all feel about it. Again, I'm Bob Marrone. Welcome to the program. And quite frankly, we're safe and sound here. And we've taken what precautions we could. We've done our disinfecting, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of people in and out of the train station today. I mean, there are going to be some. People have to go to work. People have to live. Life goes on. So let us get into that. And once again, welcome to the program. The National Guard has been deployed in New Rochelle, and this is our top story this morning, obviously, as Governor Cuomo ordered schools, houses of worship, and other large gathering places in a portion of the city to temporarily close as New York tries to stop the spread of one of the country's worst coronavirus clusters, and that's here in New Rochelle. Cuomo announced a plan yesterday to enforce a containment area of 1 mile, a 1-mile radius around the Young Israel Synagogue at the center of the cluster, which includes part of the city of New Rochelle, obviously, and stretches into the town of Eastchester a little bit, both of which are about 20 miles north of New York City in Westchester County, like we didn't know. And when they say that, we're 20 miles away from the Bronx. Any large gathering places within that containment area will be required to shut down through March 25th. Figures, everybody will be back unconscious on the day I turn 70. Thank you. This includes Young Israel and several public and private schools, including 3 each from New Rochelle and Tucker Hall School District. We will have the entire list coming up before we open up the telephones. We'll share all that information with you. Meanwhile, a Yonkers Raceway horse trainer, which is our second story, but we'll roll it here into the first. A horse trainer And mainstay in the panic, who lived in Bergen County over in New Jersey, is the first death that we know of in the state of New Jersey and linked to the story. He was identified as one John Brennan, is 69. Yikes. 69 health officials said Brennan had several underlying medical conditions, including emphysema, diabetes, and hypertension, and had been hospitalized at Hackensack University Medical Center since last Friday. He suffered a heart attack Monday night. He was revived, but he did pass on. So obviously a lot of complications there. The racetrack was closed yesterday. Now, but Westchester remains the epicenter. We here in New Rochelle are the epicenter. 108 confirmed cases. They account for 62% of the state's total. Cuomo used the word breathtaking to describe the numbers rising here in Westchester County. Now, he did say, and it's true, 1 mile is a fairly constrained area. It is dramatic action, but is the largest cluster in the country. And this is literally a matter, as he said, though, of life and death. And as we said, this man, John Brennan, passed away. Now, Mayor Noam Bramson yesterday, we reached out to him. We'll try and get him on this morning as well. He was just overwhelmed yesterday with requests and gave a press conference at City Hall and so forth. The mayor said that the affected area consists mostly of homes, but also a number of schools. Now, here's some, just to get locally before we get into the school list. Ward B Elementary School, Albert Leonard Middle School, and the New Rochelle High School will be closed starting tomorrow. Right through March 25th. Bramson of the state is sending in the National Guard to assist with cleaning public areas. And this is what Bramson said, rather. I said, pardon me, Bramson. This is out of his press conference. Now, the things that they're doing, they're not coming in here with guns, and they're not coming in here to put up sandbags or anybody has all these images. They are manpower. And because they are, if you will, employees and sworn members of government in their construct, they can be, in effect, ordered to do these things. They very well couldn't say, give us 1,000 volunteers. Although I bet you would have gotten them, knowing the volunteerism that's here in Westchester. So, but what they'll be doing, they will be cleaning schools and cleaning group gathering buildings, and they will be delivering meals to people. They will not be engaged in any fantasy one might have in their heads. They're here to help in a very manual labor and, frankly, risk-incurring way. It is a risk for them. But they are public servants, and they will do that. Thus, the people coming in. And it is expected that they will be in a position to deliver thousands of meals to children who qualify for free or reduced meals in school. Keep in mind, a lot of kids who get their lunch or breakfast at schools won't be getting them anymore. So how are they going to get the food? And this is one way to do it. And the mayor is still, as he said yesterday, waiting for the very details of how the National Guard arrives. And when they arrive, that's going to be a second set of what I'm going to use the word hysteria, but people can say, oh my God, look, we had troops on the street. I'm just trying to keep an even keel. I'm not saying this is no big deal. But labels, words stimulate, words and titles innervate. And we need to keep an even keel. Now, as far as the schools, though, here's what the superintendent is up to. New Rochelle parents and students are trying to figure out what they will be doing for the next 2 weeks. Parents say they have to figure out what to do about childcare. Students who have to study from home say they worry about the AP exams and failing, or rather falling behind in general. The district has released a plan for coursework. One of the big challenges this district faces is that not every student has access to the internet or laptops. News 12, who contributed to this story, has learned that students at the high school and Albert Leonard Middle School are being sent home with Chromebooks. Those are like tablets, so they can complete coursework. The superintendent said in a letter to parents that they must make the 2 weeks off count and ensure that students are still learning and engaged during this containment period. The decision to close schools comes one day after the superintendent said she would not close without written directions from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. She has said all along that keeping kids in school is a priority and the safest place for them. Right now, there are no confirmed cases in any school, but staff members at Columbus and Albert Leonard are on self-quarantine at this time. And, yesterday, and I don't know where it came from. Someone tried to take a shot. Could have been one of the other local radio stations. I can't remember. That Feo was somehow behind the times, and the governor straightened her out. Well, that's silly. Feo is walking a very fine line, trying to keep our kids educated, trying to make sure they get through school, trying to deal with turmoil, and taking her cues, rightly so, from the powers that be. I think that any criticism of her for decisions yet made or not made, you can do that down the road if you like. But everybody's trying to feel their way and working with government. So any suggestion that Dr. Feo, and there weren't a lot of them, but there was a significant one or two that I saw. Quite frankly, is almost irresponsible and silly. All right. 4 state playoff games were postponed due to coronavirus concerns. The boys and girls state basketball tournaments, they were going to begin today. Several local championships are being forced to work. Now, don't worry, I get up every day with a little bit of allergy. I don't have the coronavirus. 4 New York State Public High School Athletic Association playoff games. Section 9 athletics, they became the latest sporting events postponed. SUNY Pulse Athletic Director Stu Robinson said the decision was made due to concern over the spread of the coronavirus. Now, George Latimer, who will be joining us at 7:35 this morning, he also tried to calm people. And this is, folks, the balance that we're trying to reach. And in his comments yesterday, and now this was posted and updated 5:30 last night, and we give full credit to our friends at LOHUD for this, and also the Journal News. George Latimer believes everyone should be cautious in the wake of the coronavirus, but he insists people should continue to live the way they used to, which is a stretch right now if you live in the belly of the beast as we do. Local businesses are feeling the impact, and boy, they are the impact of the coronavirus outbreak. Businesses at the Elite Nail and Spa Salon in Bronxville used to be booming, but not so much anymore. The county executive went to Bronxville yesterday to do a little shopping of his own, trying to keep things going. He believes the fears about the coronavirus may be overblown and could begin to hurt small businesses. I think that's already happened, and we'll ask the county executive about that when he comes on. He's saying that it's safe to be here, safe to shop here, safe to eat here. The contagion we are dealing with, we're trying to deal with at different levels of government, but not affect the way you go about your business day. So we will go over that list with you. Now, it's coming up on 6:50. We're going to wait another minute before we go back to the weather and do a reset. We have a lot to talk about today. And I know you care about many of you do, about what we called Super Tuesday 2, which was or is the race for the presidential nomination of the Democratic Party, took place yesterday. Biden won it almost every one of those races handily. We'll get to that. But right now we want to deal with what's going on here in New Rochelle and put some common sense and balance to this. And this will include your calls. We made time for it early in the show today. So please bear with us. Now, there was a piece yesterday, and there were a couple like this. And we've included it in a little consolidation that we'll cover. 10 reasons why you ought not to panic. We're going to go over that in a moment. And a list of areas, schools, universities, and events closed amid the COVID-19 outbreak. Now, a couple of other items before we get rolling. Yes, Joe Biden continued his march toward the Democratic presidential nomination last night with another string of commanding primary wins that left challenger Bernie Sanders on the ropes. Maintaining the momentum sparked by his campaign, saving win in South Carolina. Yesterday, he won in Michigan, and that was the big one. Missouri, Mississippi, Idaho, only North Dakota. We're still waiting for that to be finalized, and Washington State. But he's probably going to win those two, and that's important to know. So why is it important to know? Because we still are going to elect a president. Most of us, or almost all of us, Whether or not we get the virus or we get a cold or get no symptoms, it's still going to be here in November or June when we come to primary day, and we're still going to have to vote, and we're going to have to go on with our lives. This is not the end of the planet, okay? Let's just all relax together. In fact, let's talk sports. Let's do the loser first, although I just have such a heartfelt feeling for this interim coach who coached right here in Westchester, Mr. Miller. It's funny, the Knicks are doing better than they ever have, although they're the last few years, although they lost yesterday from the Wizards, 122 to 115. The Rangers continue to claw in some ways, perhaps towards a playoff spot, perhaps not, but their 18-year-old rookie got 2 goals last night. They defeated the Dallas Stars by a score of 4-2. And if you're wondering about Kreider, the player that they re-signed, one of their top players, he's already out of his boot for his broken foot, and hopefully he can be back soon. Now, I'm going to sneeze. It is not related to the virus. Stay there. Those of you who listen to and watch the program regularly know that my allergies always act up in the morning, and I get a few sniffles, and I turn it off like I just did for you. I'm going to do it again. All right. We do have to do a weather reset, and then we're going to come back with some very important stuff. Bob, what are we going to come back with? Okay, here's what we're going to come back with. We're going to give you a complete list of schools, universities, and other important organizations that are closed, or at least closed for a while during this problem. We're going to share with you fear versus fact, the psychology behind the outbreak and how people are reacting, and then something very important, 10 reasons why you ought not to panic. But first, let's go to the weather. The weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. It is 47, another fairly nice day today. It's 47, few clouds in the sky. We're going to get up to 55 today, but the few clouds will give way this afternoon. There's a few clouds now to, cloudy skies. And as we get into tonight, partly cloudy and chilly with lows around 36. You'll feel it. Mostly cloudy tomorrow with a few spotty evening rain showers, highs around 53. On Friday, mostly cloudy, scattered periods of rain though, some breaks of sun, warmer with highs around 65 degrees. We should start drying out in the afternoon. Friday night, a few clouds, lows around 36. Saturday, sunny and breezy with highs around 53 degrees. Spring is sprung, and I know a lot of people wonder, and we've got doctors coming on tomorrow. We've been lining up all kinds of people through this bit of a crisis. And one of the things that we want to find out from them is, will the warm weather lessen the spread of the virus, and how should it peak? You notice everyone's creating, at least with respect to what's going on here in New Rochelle, this 2-week, 14-day window. We'll try and deal with that. But what we want to do right now is share with you a list of schools and other institutions that are closed. And we're going to include the region, okay? Because many people now listening to the broadcast, as much as we are New Rochelle-centric, because we're here and we're worried about what's going on here, our listenership is very broad now, and we want to include them. And we'll start out in Connecticut, Norwalk Public School District, Norwalk. The school will be canceled for all students Thursday, March 12th for preparations in the event of a prolonged exposure. And that will include the Wilcoxon Elementary School. There is a person currently under investigation saying that they may have the virus. The Locust Valley Central School District. Those schools are closed Tuesday after 2 contracted employees involved in transporting students have tested positive. And all right, we get out to Nassau now. Oh, no, Ma, that's out of order. Okay. I see what we did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. That's Locust. Nassau Community College, following the school's first positive association with the virus. Nassau Community College, that's obviously out on Long Island. They're the second group we have here. Plainview Old Bethpage Central High School, the district will be closed Tuesday after a staff member tested positive. In Oyster Bay, East Norwich School District, the district announced it will be closed Tuesday after 2 individuals employed by a transportation contractor got the disease. In New Jersey, Red Bank Regional High School closed on March 10. just as a precautionary measure. Berkeley Heights, all school will be closed. Were closed yesterday to perform a deep cleaning. Cranford School District, they will be closed on March 16th so that the schools can be cleaned out. Elizabeth Public Schools, they will be early dismissal on March 16th for those same reasons. Plainfield Public Schools, those public schools will be closed Friday, March 13th for in-district students only. Roselle Public Schools will be closed March 10 and March 11 for deep cleaning. All right, let's get down into New York City. Brooklyn Friends School, classes suspended in all divisions. The head of the school says there's a possibility that a member of the school community may have been exposed to a family member who displayed symptoms. I mean, how far are we going to go with this? I do not know. Horace Mann School closed through March 31st. Riverdale Country School, the school is closed on March 10 as a precautionary measure. And the Ethical Cultural Fieldston School closed March 10 as a precautionary measure. All right, now let's get into the belly of the beast. Westchester County, listen up. Blind Brook School District, a parent with students at Bruno M. Ponterio Ridge had flu-like symptoms, and the family has now been quarantined. Scarsdale School District, all schools will be closed through March 18. KO Academy in Purchase, they will be closed for the rest of the school year. Classes will be continued online. New Rochelle School District. Once again, the New Rochelle School District Superintendent Dr. Laurel Feo said, after Governor Cuomo announced he will be closing the public schools 1 mile from Young Israel Synagogue, the schools impacted are limited to New Rochelle High School, Albert Leonard Middle School, and Ward Elementary School. They will be closed, from yesterday, all right, from actually today, you'll pardon me, tomorrow, right through March 25th. The Tucker Hole School District schools will close there also from March 12th, that's tomorrow, through March 25th. They're in the containment area. The Windward School in White Plains closed through the end of spring break. The Westchester Day School in Mamaroneck closed through March 17th. The Westchester Torah Academy in White Plains closed through March 16th. So we turn to Rockland now. All schools closed as district. This is the East Ramapo School District, waits for test results and instructions from the health department. And we'll be back and double check those New Rochelle schools in a moment. Colleges and universities, Bergen Community College through March 25, Columbia and Barnard College. They have someone there. There is no time limit. They have someone there who has the virus, no time limit on when they'll reopen. Fordham University, all face-to-face classes across its campuses are canceled until further notice. Pardon me. Hofstra, all on-campus classes are canceled through Friday due to a student reporting flu-like symptoms after attending an off-campus conference. Iona College, all in-person and online arts and science classes have been canceled effective this past Monday. Residence halls will close early for spring break, and they did so as of yesterday, March 10th. Malloy College, as of yesterday, no one has tested positive. However, out of an abundance of caution, that's a new, very busy word, not new, but a very busy word these days. Malloy College has decided that effective Wednesday, March 11th, all academic courses will transition to alternative deliveries. Montclair State, Mammoth University, they're closed. New York Institute of Technology, campuses will be closed today, or rather yesterday they were closed to conduct a thorough cleaning. NYU, all classes will be moved to remote instruction started Wednesday. Now this next one's important. Pace, today. Wednesday, March 11th, will suspend in-person class meetings on all 3 campuses and move all campuses to remote learning through March 29. Spring break for New York City and Pleasantville will continue as scheduled next week. Princeton, the school is restricting large gatherings and school-sponsored travel amid the outbreak. Students are also encouraged there to stay home. Rider University, they're extending spring break for an additional week through March 27th. Rowan, the school is lengthening the spring break by about a week through March 27. They say the extension will give faculty time to convert curriculum to be delivered to students virtually. Seton Hall is suspending all in-person classes beginning on Wednesday, March 11th, through and including Friday, March 13th. All classes will resume online beginning Monday, March 16th. St. John's University. Again, this hackneyed phrase, you'll hear it a lot over the next 2 weeks. Out of an abundance of caution, the university says it is suspending face-to-face instruction at all locations. They will move to online instruction effective March 12th. The Stevens Institute of Technology classes will be closed as of yesterday, but will resume today through March 13, but completely online. A lot has to do with the way they word this stuff. Stockton University announced plans to extend spring break through March 24th. Stony Brook. They too But Department of Health has determined that out of an abundance of caution at this time, all events planned for the month of March are canceled. Some events that are canceled will get, oh, by the way, I'm sorry, the University of New Haven, all in-person classes are canceled through the remainder of the week, leading up to the start of their spring break. Yeshiva, all classes on its Barron and Wolf campuses are canceled through March 16 as a precautionary measure. It's 7:02. Events, SIAC, CIAA, the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference, well, that's a mouthful, has halted the remaining state tournaments. New York International Auto Show. As a result, if you have tickets, folks, listen up. As a result of the ongoing health concerns from the spread of the virus, the auto show has been rescheduled to August 28th. No auto show, it's moved to August 28th. The New York Runners Half Marathon. The welfare of our running community is always our top priority. Oh, they come out with all this nonsense first. It's been rescheduled for Sunday, March 15th. That's what we have so far. It is 7:03. The previous half hour and the current hour are supported by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.org. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena and Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and plug in virtualreality.com. Now, this was an interesting piece that came out yesterday, and this was in News 12. And we commend them for covering this. Fear versus fact, the psychology behind the coronavirus outbreak. With all the talk and media coverage, and we're doing it now, of the coronavirus, it's no wonder people want to take all the precautions. Local school districts are closing, colleges are canceling classes, and Italy has put sports at a complete halt. In fact, that whole country is coming to a halt right now. They're saying no one should go to work. We've seen empty store shelves and heard the stories of people stockpiling everything from toilet paper, which is funny, to soap. But doctors are reminding people there is a fine line between preparation and panic. When people hear bad news, there are different types of personalities. Some are more calm in general and are able to listen to news and intellectually taking it in. They can say, this is what I need to do. These are the personal risks for me, and I understand I need to be vigilant. I need to follow the guidelines, and I will be fine. My family will be fine. Those are the reasonable folks. But Glatt says, and this is a professor, says some others hear the same message, and their hearts begin to race. They get very nervous, and they look at the internet that tells them we're all going to die, and we're not. So if you are one of the nervous types, try and listen to the balance of all of this. The odds of anyone listening to us speak this morning of us becoming deathly ill and perhaps dying is very low. In fact, it's, I don't know if it's probably at this point, because the flu season is going to ebb soon, probably a little more troubling than the flu, but it's, if you look at it that way, and I'm not saying to minimize it as just another strain of the flu coming through, if those were the words we had used, though it's not an influenza-type virus, perhaps people would be a little calmer. Some of us are going to get it. Some of us are going to have no more than my early morning allergy sniffles, and that's it. Some are even going to be asymptomatic. Others will actually get a heavy cold-like set of symptoms, and others will get, a real good kick in the butt like the flu does. And those with compromised immune systems or bad luck for whatever reason or serious pre-existing conditions it could be fatal for them. But that is what it is. My 10 reasons why you ought not to panic. And we're going to share those with you now as we go through 706. We know what it is. The first cases of AIDS were described in June 1981, and it took more than 2 years to identify the virus. Well, we know what COVID-19 is. The first cases of severe pneumonia were reported in China back in December. We already know that it is a new virus from a specific group. It's in that family of SARS, but it's not SARS. The disease is called COVID-19. It is thought to be related to a virus that may have started in bats. Maybe we'll all learn to fly. Did I sound like a bat? They have that weird sound when you hear them beep, beep, beep. They use radar. I will hear about that. It is 707. We know how to detect the virus. All of this business that we're going through about kits, do we have enough kits? Well, the only reason we're concerned about having enough kits is we know how to identify the virus. The situation is already improving in China. That's a third reason not to panic. The strong control and isolation measures imposed by China are paying off. For several weeks now, the number of cases diagnosed every day is decreasing. A very detailed epidemiology. I got it. Wow. I can do this. Epidemiological follow-up is being carried out in other countries. Outbreaks are very specific to areas, as they are here in Westchester. 80% of cases are mild. I'm going to repeat that. 80% of cases are mild. The disease causes no symptoms or is mild. In 81% of the cases, you may be walking around with it. It's not going to hurt you. Okay? Of course, in 14%, it can cause severe pneumonia, and in 5%, it can become critical or even fatal. So, people recover. This is reason 5 not to panic. Much of the reported data relates to the increase in the number of confirmed cases and the number of deaths, but most infected people are cured. There are 13 times more cured cases than deaths. 6, for those of you worried about your children, forgive me, only 3% of cases occur in people under 20, and as my grandson was gloating, I'm safe, and mortality under 40 is only 0.2%. Symptoms are so mild that in children it can go unnoticed. 7, and this is important for those of you who take precautions, as we have here at this studio, the virus can be effectively inactivated from surfaces with a solution of ethanol, hydrogen peroxide, you got this running around the house, or sodium hypochlorite. That's bleach, by the way. Many of you have bleach and you have the bubbly stuff you use in the bathroom, all that. If you're worried, get the surfaces. In just 1 minute, the virus is gone. Okay? Do I have to demonstrate it? Do I have to do it right here? I got all these cans. I'll show you in a little bit. Science is on it globally. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. How could I miss the most important thing? If one more person tells me not to touch my face, but it's true. Try to avoid touching your face, even though it's a big habit for we human beings. Frequent hand washing. Now, don't become like Leonardo DiCaprio in The Aviator, where you're washing it 87 times a day. And some people who have OCD, and it's no simple illness, don't be hard on them, that will be washing it 77 times a day. But they will survive this better than the rest of us anyway. Hand washing with soap and water, believe it or not, is the most effective way to avoid contagion. Science is on it globally. This is number 8. It is the age of international science cooperation, and after just 1 month, 164 articles could be accessed about COVID-19, as well as many others available in repositories of articles not yet reviewed. We continue. 7-Eleven. It's not the grocery store. There are already, this is reason number 9 not to panic, there are already vaccine prototypes. Our ability to design new vaccine, I can't pronounce normal words. It's the COVID virus. Our ability to design new vaccines is spectacular. There are already more than 8 projects underway seeking a vaccine against the new virus. There are groups that work on vaccination projects against similar viruses, by the way. And the vaccine group of the University of Queensland in Australia has announced it is already working on a prototype using the technique called molecular clamp. Whatever it is, we don't need to know the specifics. They're working on it. And lastly, antiviral trials, number 10. Again, we've been covering 10 reasons not to panic. Antiviral trials are underway. Vaccines are preventative. Right now, the treatment of people who are already sick is important. There are already more than 80 clinical trials analyzing the virus. There are antivirals that have been used for other infections which are already approved and that we know are safe that are being tested in this case. One of those that has already been tested in humans is something called remdesivir, a broad-spectrum antiviral still under study. Another called chloroquine, an anti-malarial, as in quinine, has been seen to have potent antiviral activity. Other proposed trials are based on another new drug that I cannot pronounce and will not try to, which is used against influenza. Maybe I can. Oseltamivir, I guess. Oseltamivir, like Oseltamivir. And it is a part and parcel with interferon, which you know is used for different illnesses, including certain cancers. The 1918 flu pandemic now, this is by comparison, so just take it easy, caused more than 25 million deaths in less than 25 weeks. Could something similar happen now? No. Almost certainly and probably not. We've never been better prepared to fight a pandemic. So that's what we know so far, and that's the reality we need to put on this. Now, just to recap, it is 7:13, and normally it's very busy here at the train station. And in all candor, it is not. I'm not going to say it's a ghost town yet. It's a little early as we get into the 8 o'clock hour, and people, and generally you see them running back here, and we'll change the camera angle. We'll see how it is. But right now, as we look out the window, and I'm even going to use our other camera here. If you look out the window out in the street, and let me get this out. And we're going to put on the lights, okay? And if you noticed how, not that we're being casual today, but we're not all in a big panic. We want you to see what it's really, and get to feel what it's like here, since you probably won't be here, many of you won't. That's outside in the front, out in the parking lot. And we don't see a lot of cars. There we see someone running, but they're running for their car, evidently. Now, as I turn it around, why is my light not working? Oh, there's always a reason for that. But nonetheless, as we look outside now towards the train, normally, and as the light comes up, you will see a lot of people running by as the sun continues coming up, and they'll be running to the train. The train is there, okay? The parking lot is out there. You see through the front door, all right? Not very busy, and we see one person now walking, and there's the train coming in, and it's about 7:15. So we will keep you up to date on all of this as we go by. In fact, we're going to leave the camera on, and it's going to face the door. And we're going to get our advertising copy away from you, so you don't have to worry about doing any commercials. That's what it's like here at 7:15 at the new Rochelle Train Station. Now, once again, you are listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station, broadcasting live this morning from the train station. And we do want to take your calls, and I know some people have texted us. Ursuline, and that's a good question. Are Ursuline in Eastchester Public Schools? Ursuline is closed right now as well, and we're going to try and get an update as soon as we can. Now, here are the phone numbers if you like to call them. We're going to give out 2 phone numbers right now. 914, of course, 222-3141, 914-222-3141, and we're going to give out today, because of what's going on, this is a line we usually reserve for guests and regulars, but we'll use it this morning as well. 914 999-4006, 999-4006. You're listening to Radio Westchester. There are some more people headed to work. Let's get to the telephone right now. Life continues. And why someone would call me whilst me on the air, I do not know. But let's get to the phones right away. All righty, you are on Radio Westchester. Good morning.
Hey, Bobby, it's Anthony. How are you?
Hey, what's going on, brother?
I just wanted to relay a personal situation that happened to me going back a while, just to kind of like set the stage for people to understand that there are all kinds of unknown viruses and illnesses every year, and that don't break out on the pandemic level that this one did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, about 10 years ago, I told you my son had gotten very sick and very ill, and I don't think I ever told you the story, but he's a type 1 diabetic. He got sick, and it went into his chest, his lungs. He was hospitalized in Connecticut in intensive care. He started to do better. They took him out of intensive care, got worse, put him back in intensive care, and the day before Superstorm Sandy, they came to my wife and I and said, if we don't transport him up to Yale, New Haven tomorrow, and the roads get shut, because of Sandy, he may not make it. So the day of Sandy, during the storm, we were on the road in an ambulance. I was in the ambulance with my son. My oldest son and my wife were in the car behind us, and we had to literally have passes to get on the highway because the highways were closed down.
Go ahead.
My youngest son was in the back of the ambulance, just like you see in MASH, with the breathing bag being squeezed to keep him during the ride to Yale, New Haven, which was roughly about 45 minutes to an hour. The ambulance was rocking side to side with all the winds. Okay? Long story short, we get him there. This place is amazing. It's as good as any downtown. They have, 9 floors to 11 floors, whatever. They have an individual ICU for each specialty on a different floor. So he went into this unit. They started pumping him. They didn't know what it was. No clue. So they're pumping antivirals, antibiotics. Got like 17 bags hanging,
Yep.
All of a sudden, next thing I know, they bring in this machine they call an ECMO.
Say that again, sir?
They tap in ECMO.
ECMO.
ECMO. Okay. They tap into his neck, carotid artery, and a vein, and it literally takes the blood out of his body, filters it, and lowers his body temperature into the 60 to 60s degree range, so that the temperature alone will deter at least the virus from multiplying, if not kill it. 9 days, I couldn't even go visit him. Because he was in an induced coma, but he would sense my presence, and his vital signs would change. And they said to me, he has to be absolutely flat. He can't be excited in any way, shape, or form. So I would stand 2 rooms away looking through glass just to look at him.
Wow.
Now, when he woke up blind in one eye because the medication that they gave him raised his blood pressure so high that he popped the retina.
Oh, my. Did they fix that, by the way?
that was able to be fixed.
Okay, thank God.
But my point is, these things are around every day. If it's your turn to get them, whether it's from a compromised immune system like my son because he has the type 1 diabetes, or whether it's the fact that they're in our age group, our immune systems are not what they used to be. It's just the roll of the dice. Now, I'm not saying we should tempt fate. Do the practical things. Wash your hands. You can't not touch your face.
I just was
human
touching my
nature.
face when you said that. Go ahead.
It's human nature, but try to control it as much as possible. If you don't have to take a subway or a bus, don't. And I understand that there are people, and I was listen, Bob, you and I come from an era where there was almost no such thing as a sick day. If it was a sick day, you were delirious.
Yeah, you slept to work. You did what you had to do.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You did. I remember having 2 impacted wisdom teeth being pulled on my lunch break and going back. So it is, and I'm not saying that we're a different breed. I'm just saying that's the way things were.
It was the culture then.
Right, absolutely.
Although, if I may,
so,
just by way of, apropos of what you're saying, as I see the people who are going to work, you saw a few when I turned the camera around, you saw a few running before for the train and a few people getting out. And I'm saying to myself, look at these people defying, not the zeitgeist or the logic, but they need to get to work. Whatever they do, they need to get there.
That's the bottom line. And
they're out here.
And that when I say we went, I say we went, it was because we had to work and put food on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And between the internet, between kiosks and everything else, it's much easier to lose your job today than it was back then. And so I understand where people have to go to work. But here again, if you take the normal precautions, 80% of the cases are, and you talk about, you read common sense things. I've listened to both sides on the internet. The ones that say the world's going to end in 2 months,
really,
the whole 9. Okay, well, you kind of got to listen to both of them because there is a ring of truth to both.
Absolutely.
Okay, but the most important thing, and the reason that from what I can gather, the reason they're closing the schools, this hasn't hit the children as hard as even flu does.
No, and you may have heard
but
it's
they are carriers.
Yes.
They are carriers. They bring it home to their parents, their grandparents, their aunts and uncles. And that's the segment of society that's most vulnerable.
Yes, and also, I think when you mentioned that they're carriers, how many parents out there get illnesses from their kids that the kids don't suffer as badly as they do? You may remember.
You know how many times my grandkids come in here with a runny nose or something, and a week later, either my wife or I both got runny noses or whatever? It's just a fact of life.
You're absolutely right. And, you may remember this when my grandson, about 8-9 years ago, he had a virus of unknown origin. And he was getting worse and worse and worse, and we were just dying. My daughter was dying. And then finally, my daughter happened to mention, he had a sinus infection the other day, and they turned the CAT scan on him, went into his sinuses or whatever they did, and realized that he had this virus and infection that was up in his sinus cavity that they somehow missed. So you never know. What's interesting? You said this
with my son. They still to this day don't know what it was or what cured him.
Are you watching?
Now, I personally think it was the ECMO machine myself more than the actual drugs.
Yeah, it may have. Now,
because by lowering the body temperature, you lower the chance of anything surviving, including your son, my son.
Yeah, your son.
But, yeah.
Hey, something I guess I can share since we're on camera now. Now, in radio and broadcasting or public speaking, you learn little tricks to control your worst habits. And obviously, as someone who does talk radio, I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't a talker. And so I had to discipline myself to become a better listener over the years. And I kind of know I'm sort of a good listener, but one of the habits that I developed has to do, and I'm going to show you right here. You're not supposed to put your hand in the mouth. Occasionally, you may see me for those of you who watch. And now, again, remember, I've been doing radio for most of the last 20 years, not television, that's some. And when you're on regular TV, your hands are down here, But one of the things I do to make sure I don't jump on another caller, such as yourself, Anthony, right now, or a guest, is you may see me sometimes doing this. or this. That's actually, yeah, I want my hand to my face, but that's to remind me to shut the bleep up, Robert. And now I've got to stop. You know what I'm saying, Anthony? I've got to, I can't keep putting my hand in my face, but I got all these little tricks. I got this one. I sometimes even go as far as this because.
Well, you need tricks for a lot of bad habits.
You have no idea. Anthony, our caller. Anthony, you know what? And I came in today, and again, the place is empty, relatively so. I came in today with the intent.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
And rightfully so.
Yes.
Seriously, people are taking it. People are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yes,
at a time
absolutely.
Like this.
But
God
I came
bless
in.
them.
I came in trying, and I stayed late yesterday, and put a lot of stories aside, trying to keep a balance. We'll have some regular guests coming on. George Latimer will be joining us actually in a few minutes, but I tried to keep a balance. I don't want people. Not that it's my job, but I'm trying to get the story out without making people crazy. There's a sweet spot in here that you're trying to get to, and I hope we can achieve that today. I really do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I still have contacts in Rochelle.
Yes.
So I had a lot of information before it was public, and I called a few of my friends.
Yes.
Naturally, some of them were just
all
like
one
me,
of them.
It is what it is. What are you going to do?
Right.
This is what we have to do. A, B, and C. And others, I called one friend who unfortunately is a hypochondriac. Okay, but I thought that she needed to know, right? Oh my God. I just left Wells Fargo Bank. I touched the handle. Am I sick? Am I, So,
Well, look at how habits are. Now, how long ago did I tell you about my habit of making sure I don't talk too quickly? 2 minutes?
yeah.
Look what I just did. And I did it totally out of habit. There's another one.
Yeah.
See where my finger is? Now, it's a habit now, but it started to remind me to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to kill myself. Yeah, I know.
But I'm just saying, the hardest thing to break is habits. So, like I said, you try to minimize them the best you can.
Well,
Nobody's going to be able to eliminate a habit. Well, let's face it, Bob. You're going to hit 70. I'm going to hit 65.
What, me? No, never. Not happening. What, 70? I can't even say it.
Listen, brother, there's only one way you ain't going to hit it. So
yeah, I guess I should welcome it. The former mayor of Mount Vernon leaving all politics out of it. Thank you, Jake. Jake brought me coffee with fingerprints on it. I'm going to drink some virus now. No, and
no hard feelings. The way Jake was hacking it up a couple of weeks ago, I would have banned him from the show there.
I was close to putting him in an oven and microwaving him. No, but one of the things, forgetting all politics, it is impossible not to like Ernie Davis, the person. Just a really wonderful, warm-hearted guy. And he comes in the radio station one day when I was at OX. And I said, "Good morning. It's good to see you, Mayor." And he said, "Oh, it's better to be seen than viewed, Bob."
Yep, absolutely.
He's so right.
I tell people I'm glad I'm on the green side of the grass.
Yeah, this is a very pleasant side. When you came in the other day, you looked much better. Now, Anthony, by the way, not virus-like. He's been dealing with spinal issues and stuff that we all do when we get older. And you look good the other day. You look like you're getting, like things are coming around for you.
When's the last time you had your eyesight checked?
Yeah, no. And although they did carry him in a wheelchair and a walker, but you handled the walker much better than usually.
I handle better than the guy who's getting prosecuted there. What's his name?
Mr. Weinstein. He gets sentenced today. I didn't even touch that story. But
the only thing he's missing is my collar.
Yeah, yeah. Although one wonders, all of a sudden these guys, it's like in Goodfellas, all of a sudden when they go in for trial, they've got oxygen tanks and walkers and wheelchairs. One wonders.
Think about this. The guy had a bad back, but didn't decide to have surgery until he was being prosecuted.
Well, isn't that the truth? And he certainly didn't have a bad back when he was stalking all those women. Although one of the funniest...
When he was doing push-ups in a cucumber patch.
One of the best... do you remember when the guy, the right-wing broadcaster, but just a wonderful guy, and we used to have... But Todd Starnes, when he was with Fox, used to be a regular on the show early in the morning. And... he used to hit me with some of the best headlines in the world, but he knew that I buy all the newspapers. And he said, "Bob, did you see the headline in the Post today?" And I'd say, "No, what, Todd?" And a little twang. And it was, now, folks, if you don't remember, the great golfer Tiger Woods was notorious womanizer that got caught by his wife and almost he was beaten with his wife's golf club. At any rate.
Yep.
Remember, they even had a calendar. There were like 24 women or something, or 12 women that they found out about. So the headline in the Post was Tiger Woods wins Athlete of the Year, and he plays golf. I, I thought that was a pretty good one.
Did you see the front page of the Daily News?
Yes, yeah, it's ridiculous, but the Post is
Yeah.
great. Though the Post again, with all this going on, they covered how Joe Biden yelled at some, I don't know, I guess some heckler yesterday. But you seem to be having a nice even keel today, Anthony, and it's a good example for folks to take it seriously, but also, sometimes this life is a roll of the dice. You do all you can, and then you go
Listen,
on.
I'm not going to tempt fate, but I'm certainly, I'm going to curtail my normal activities. I'm not going to hibernate. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be shut in. That's ridiculous.
Well, hey, did you get lots of calls yesterday from people who don't live here saying, Lee, flee the country. Where am I going to go? Italy?
Yeah, they wanted to know if there are any condos up for sale.
Oh. Hey, listen, thank you very, very much. And
You got it, brother.
we'll be here
Very
all
good.
day. Anthony, folks, calling in here at the Radio Westchester. It is 7:32. The time flies when you're having fun. And what did I do with my weather? George Latimer should be joining us in just a couple of minutes. He's the county executive. And once again, I heard all kinds of rumors. I have to hear if it's true. But good rumors, actually, that County Executive Latimer was out and about in the North End last night, showing that you didn't have to be petrified to live your life, and I'm glad he did that. As for me, I was having a burger. I was actually out on business. They're going to be sponsoring with us soon, so we can mention and give them a plug, Beachmont Tavern. And I have my burger. By the way, you really want to get a burger. Everybody talks about it at the Beachmont Tavern, the wings, best wings in Westchester. They actually have the best burger in Westchester. Some sauteed onions. You don't need the salad stuff on there, the pickle, the lettuce, the tomato. Just get the burger, medium to well. Throw some onions on there. You died and went to heaven. All righty. We did that because I'm supposed to be doing the weather, and I misplaced it during my conversations here. And I have it here. Well, I know what it is. It's going to be nice. It's all I know. What did I do with the weather? All righty, but I will give credit to some sponsors, and we'll be back with the weather in just a moment. Today's program is supported by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management. Actually, it's uhdc.org now. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Con, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. For you Ranger fans, they won. Their winning ways have continued, and it should be fun to talk with Jake. He came in a hazmat suit, but Jake is here today, and he will be talking with us. Let's look again. The County Executive George Latimer is going to join us, and then Jake will be with us. Yvonne Hayden, City Councilman here from New Rochelle, joins us at 8:20. A.J. Woodson will be with us this morning, and we'll be talking about things Mount Vernon with some of the breaking stories coming out of that city. And at 9 o'clock today, Harlan Ullman, his column in UPI was about how the coronavirus may affect things, but there were some other stories that came out yesterday we want to ask him for. Evidently, the Taliban are breaking every rule in the world regarding this so-called treaty they signed with us. We need to find out why. Are they doing one of these deals where they're taking advantage of everything that they can within the treaty, the loopholes, or are they just defying us? And other international stories. And as for the weather right now, it is 47. It is sunny. And the sun's going to go away. We'll have some clouds later in the day on into tomorrow. Again, temperatures in the low 50s. We may have a shower or two, and that will go away on Friday. Once again, though, temperatures in the high 40s and middle 50s. And the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. And here is, did I miss the county exec? I've been known to do that, missed him. He'll call back, he always does. How did I do that? That's because I was doing the weather. He's always on time. Can't see, I can't see. Accept, all righty. Accept, not now. Accept. Goody, goody, goody. All righty. Perfect timing. It is 7:36. Please welcome the County Executive, George Latimer. Good morning, County Executive. How are you?
Good morning, Bob. Back for a second round this week.
Back for a second round and much needed. We saw you on TV yesterday. We heard the governor. We heard Mayor Noam Bramson. And now I heard what I guess I can actually call a nice rumor about you. Again, your proclivity not to sleep, which is legendary, that you were out and about participating at some of our restaurants and places to show people that they shouldn't be too frightened. Can you talk a little bit about that before we get into details?
Yeah. Last night I went by, I was in the Wackigill section of New Rochelle, which is, within this corridor that's been identified. I don't like to use the phrase they use. It makes it sound like something out of Chernobyl.
Yes.
But, jokingly, I called it in the zone because, whenever you're playing basketball, I was never good at it. Whenever you can start hitting shots like crazy, they say, hey, he's in the zone, meaning he's hitting shots left and right. Well, if you want to use it that way, I was. And just, for the sake of argument, I wanted to show at least, one of the many restaurant tours, just like you did last week at Eden Walk. Mm-hmm. I wanted to show that there is nothing to fear to be there. There is no contagion in the air. Realistically, when you look at what the governor has done, he shut schools down and other places of gathering. It does affect religious institutions, quite a few.
Yeah. And
it's going to be disruptive. But if you are not under precautionary quarantine, which means you may have been in touch with somebody with the virus, or if you're not in mandatory quarantine, which means you tested positive, you can come and go as you please if you live in that area, and you can shop and go to restaurants as you please in that area. So, people should not see it as some sort of, there's going to be a checkpoint, Charlie, to get in, and you have to do this, that, or the other thing. That is not the case. And I just wanted to prove it to myself last night by having, going in and having a quick meal.
Yeah, but to show you what it's like when you're in the news, I worked late last night because I wanted to get a lot of stuff ready for this show because we're trying to capture, I think, the spirit that you did. We reported a story. Someone wrote a story you were involved in yesterday about, quote, Latimer, it's safe to be here, it's safe to shop here. And we, too, we're preparing to try and get this balance, get it out there, let people know what the risks are, but also how to stay calm. And so I went out for a late burger over at the Beachmont. And you know what? People start texting me on my phone, Latimer sighted in the North End. So we kind of knew about it. Now, let's get to basics. If you could put in context for folks, County Executive, what this 1 mile zone means, because people have, when they heard National Guard, some people really panicked.
Right. Well, first of all, let's put the National Guard into proper perspective. Mm-hmm. The governor controls the New York State National Guard, and he has authorized a deployment into New Rochelle, not to stand guard, not to walk the streets with weaponry, but to be a humanitarian workforce to help accomplish some tasks that right now the various institutions don't have the money or the resources to do. The first thing is there's an effort made to deep clean all the schools, and that may also include doing a deep clean of any of the public meeting spaces. It could be the common areas of synagogues that are in the area, the churches that are in the area, any other place that might be a congregating area. We know the area: Wackigill Country Club, Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church. There's a United Methodist Church there, Bethel Synagogue, yada yada. And to turn around and tell those institutions, hey, go spend money that you haven't budgeted to do a deep clean on your public areas is unfair. So the National Guard is tasked to come in and do that. And then, because they are closing some schools, Ward Elementary, Albert Leonard Junior High School, I believe the New Rochelle Public High School, and there's
Ursuline now as well.
Ursuline, right, is a private school in that area, and there may be some others. I'm just going over the surface of it.
Sure.
What you do in situations like that is you say, okay, the National Guard will be tasked with helping with the distribution of food. Now, that may turn into one sort of massive temporary Meals on Wheels that might manifest itself in another way. I don't know exactly how it's all going to be worked out and administered. I assume that's the task of the day for officials at the state, city, and county level. But you have manpower to do it, and it's not going to cost your city budget, your county budget, your church or synagogue budget, because here comes the National Guard to help. It's the same way the National Guard performs a service in the middle of a hurricane or a flood.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that there is a lot of sensitivity. I mean, I have it too. If, the president started ordering the National Guard out on our streets, I would wonder why. What's the purpose?
Mm-hmm.
And in this particular case, I think the governor was very clear to the mayor, to myself, and to others that the purpose is to be helpful in the process, not to, represent some sort of a control thing. So I don't fear it at all. Look, I have a big county. I travel all over the county. And even yesterday, while I was in Bronxville, in part of the day to try to boost up people to feel comfortable there because of Lawrence Hospital portion of this. And I wanted, just on my own to show that I have no problems going in and out of portions of New Rochelle that are affected. By the way, as you know, for many years, I represented the south end of New Rochelle.
Yes.
So if you want to talk restaurants, I could talk about Patsy's. I could talk about Modern downtown and Alvin's and all the other places.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not one end of town versus the other, which often becomes a debate.
Yep.
But I was also in other communities as well for community events, not just, Bronxville and New Rochelle. So you try to show that this county is resilient. This county has people who accomplish things of all background and nature. And it's not driven by ideology or by ethnicity. There's successful people in every gradation on the political spectrum, on the ethnic spectrum. This is one of those challenges that we face up to. We're not Pollyanna. We don't think this is nothing. It's something, and it's something serious. But it's not Armageddon. It's not run around the streets. Godzilla is not buildings down in Tokyo. And I think just to show confidence, to show that you and I and everybody else, we can live our lives, and over time, we can defeat this thing.
We're with the county executive, George Latimer, here on Radio Westchester last night, out participating, actually eating in one of the restaurants in the North End, in the troubled zone here. We saw you on television with Commissioner Amler, Sharita Amler, who you and she and the governor doing a fine job. But now, one of the things that hit me was we are in the midst of this now. So we can sort of look and see a horizon. And this term that we heard you and Ms. Amler and the governor talk about is this 2-week window. Everybody's looking at March 25th, which I heard because it's a big birthday for me. But what do we expect in 2 weeks' time? Are we hoping for a peak? I mean, you can't predict the future, but people have been asked to be quarantined for 14 days. What happens in 2 weeks?
Well, I don't think it's the peak and then we're past it. I think this is like hitting the reset button when, you're trying to straighten out your television or your cell phone, you turn it off, you turn it back on.
Yeah.
And you try to get a clean reset. What's the reset? We want a deep clean of all the public places that people congregate to make sure there is no contagion waiting for us on surfaces to the best extent possible, number one. Number two, we want to reduce the amount of interactions in an area where we know that a number of people have tested positive. There may be other people who are positive but haven't been tested, or the test results haven't come back. And while we all go about our day, if a person doesn't know that they've been infected, which is certainly possible, therefore you're not self-quarantining, you don't think you've been affected by the virus, and in your comings and goings, we reduce the number of major public events. Now, the reality is people go wherever they go. I'm Roman Catholic. I go to different churches on a given Sunday, depending on where I have to go for the day. If I have an event in White Plains first thing on a Sunday morning, I might go to Our Lady of Mount Carmel.
Right.
If I'm in Port Chester, I might go to St. John Bosco. And so if I'm Catholic and I live in the zone, there's no Catholic church there, but, I might, go outside that area to where there is a congregation of people. But whatever it is, it gives you the time to figure out, okay, I have my normal pattern of behavior. It involves not just the religious, but the secular things in life. And those entities will not be meeting for this period of time in their normal places, and that's disruptive. I understand it. I know that Purim was at hand for those of the Jewish faith who are heading toward Easter and Passover and the two major religions, and you want to be in your house of worship for these things. And not only that, all the school kids. This is, you're in the spring of maybe your senior year of high school, either Ursuline or New Rochelle High School. This is a big time. You're going to have a prom ahead, graduation to follow, and all that. And so if we can reset the button now, if we can get to a new baseline where we have some confidence in cleanliness, then hopefully that will prove to be curative. I expect, and I think we all do, that every day the more people that are tested, particularly in that targeted zone that began this contagion, we're going to see more cases rise. But it doesn't mean that it's everywhere and universal in the streets of New Rochelle. Hopefully, this will help, get us to a better place. And, the governor has the authority to do these things. He could have done a lot more. Mm-hmm. The CDC was saying, shut the schools down from 4 to 6 weeks. And, folks from the New Rochelle School District said, wait a minute, that is extremely disruptive. You can't do that. So, the governor heard, and he dialogued. I know he asked for my input. He asked for the mayor's input. He asked for the input of the state legislators, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, mm-hmm. Shelley Mayer, Andy Paul, and Steve Otis. They were all involved in dialogue yesterday. So he was very inclusive in getting opinions, and I think, now we have to administer, and this is the job of the county government. In some cases, I make decisions, as I did yesterday in canceling some county events or postponing them. And in some cases, you have to implement somebody else's decisions, but we have to work cooperatively. And we just put a call in this morning to the mayor to discuss what his plans are for the day, and does he need the county to coordinate with him on anything? Because that's the way government has to work when you're in a crisis situation. You have to work cooperatively. You got to put aside all of the BS that normally takes up your political day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't thank you enough. I can't imagine the requests for your time, the mayor's time, the governor, but to come on and give us all this time this morning. Now, please do know, County Executive, that if in any way you need to get the word out, or you need a studio to dedicate to get the word out, we are here and we will answer your call. So anything else? By the way, before you go, only if you got a minute or two.
Yes, Bob.
Any other announcements you need to make? The mic's yours.
No. Well, I think it's important to note, I did mention that we have postponed some county functions that were in our authority. This week's WOW conference, which is Westchester Women Conference on Friday, has been postponed. We have a new date later in the spring, which we hope we can make depending on the process of this. Next week, we had a public event to start our public hearing process on the airport master plan. That's been postponed. We'll set a new date for that. The Affordable Housing Expo coming up this weekend at the County Center. We'll set a new date for that. We want to avoid, if we can, just what we just said, mass groupings of people, particularly where we think we may have seniors in attendance, because mm-hmm. it's seniors and people obviously with compromised immune systems, but it's senior citizens that are the most vulnerable here. When we have a program with young people, everybody cares about their kids, but if we have a program that will attract people, Bob, in your age and mine, we are the ones that have the weaker immune systems, and we're not as young as we used to be, and those are the areas where we're going to try to err on the side of caution. There have also been some cancellations of some.
Mayor,
White Plains canceled their parades. There may be others.
Yeah, I think we may see others. I know the New York parade is still on. Once again, I don't want to dominate all your time. I know how important it is, and you've got even networks after your case. We really appreciate it. So please, if you need to get the word out in any way, you feel free to call us. County Executive George Latimer, thank you, and thanks for keeping an even keel, helping people do that, sir.
Bob, it's a pleasure. We'll talk.
All right, take care. County Executive George Latimer spending time with us this morning. And again, I got to tell you, folks, the demands on the time of these people last night when we reached out, I don't think he sleeps. I really don't think he sleeps. And one of the things, and I don't mind giving them credit because they do a great local job too over at WVOX, but he's been doing a community report for them that he calls in like 1 o'clock in the morning. For years and years and years, and when I worked there, and I don't think he sleeps, and that's all I can say. It is 7:50. You're listening to Radio Westchester here on. Let me tell you where you're listening. You're listening on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Periscope, iTunes, iHeartRadio. We are everywhere. Our primary app, of course, for those of you who just want audio. We are on RadioWestchester.com, Mornings with Bob Marrone. And those of you who go to the app MyTuner Radio, there are little icons there. You press on either one, and that will own that app for you. and you can listen live as well. Now, what makes us a little interesting, perhaps more than others, is that this radio station is in the belly of the beast. It is in the epicenter. We're about maybe another mile yet away from the area that has been circled off and, if you will, not quarantined, and that the National Guard will help deliver food and things like that here in New Rochelle, New York. Now, one of the reasons we usually keep the guest camera off until the guest comes in. But one of the reasons, and I've got my left hand out, as you can see that, and I'm managing the guest camera, that is out onto the parking lot, or I should show you out onto the parking lot. If you look through, there we go, the front door. It's not very busy out in the short-term parking lot. Now, as I rotate the camera, and you're going to go right past my ugly face again, but you'll see not a lot going on, and that's generally speaking a hubbub. And it depends on when the trains come in. People know their train schedules very well. Now, as we have windows all the way around, as we circle it, the other two windows that you see, and one has that lamp over it, so it may hurt what you're looking at a little bit. That's the car lot and bus terminal. Anyone who drives here takes the bus to the train station. There's like 1,500 car lot. They come, we can see them coming through those two windows, or as we wrap around, and you see me and back in my little control center here with all these gadgets. Now, these windows here, right there is the other door where people would come through on their way to the train. And to the back, this far window, you'll actually see the train passing by. And I know some of you, depending on what camera angles we use each day, will say, hey, we want to see the trains going. And generally, you can do that here, as you can now. Now, normally, there are people running out that door, and it's not a steady stream. It comes in spurts and pulses. People know when the trains are coming in, and sometimes they sit upstairs in their cars or whatever. But a real significant lack in traffic. But again, as you can see, that's one of the reasons why we're the radio station at the train station. We are wide open here. People can see in, and we can see out. And again, you don't need to see my notes to myself, but we're going to keep the camera right now. We're going to keep it focused outside into the parking lot, and maybe we can get some folks who want to come in and talk about why they have to go to work today, why they are indeed doing that. But it is interesting when you're doing the news, and the very place where you do it is in the heart of a news story. It makes it a little easy to cover. I find it interesting, last night all the networks came by. And TV is different. It's one of the reasons, by the way, I went to radio rather than television, even though we're streaming, is when you do TV news, it's like being a bee. You land on a flower and then you move. Well, yesterday there were trucks all out here, and we chit-chatted with some of them, Channel 4 and 7 and all the big regional stations. They come, they take pictures of the trains, they get shots of everything, and they talk to a few people on the platform. And then they're gone. Well, we can't go anywhere. We're here. So you will get any first-person accounts or views because we are one of them. We're one of the two businesses here at the train station. But there's another. Now, there's this show. There's this radio station, Radio Westchester. There also is a very wonderful snack bar inside. And they are there like from 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, right on till midnight. And they have been showing up every day as well and preparing and seeing a lesser number of people. And we have a group, and this needs to be said, of wonderful security guards here. And I know my partner, I should say, and I always worry about anybody going to break in here. It's be almost impossible because we have 24-hour people on duty. The MTA people in general, it's kind of like a sitcom. Everybody here who works in the radio station, in the train station, we all know each other. And we say hello, and we talk about the crowds. And a lot of them, because of the jobs they have, can't come on the air, although I'd like to get them on the air and see how they're doing. Also, some of the regular police officers, even this one who's a terrific guy, who was forced to give me a ticket because I parked in a place I should not have parked. I didn't make excuses. Well, actually, I did. Because you can only stay right out here for 15 minutes. And every once in a great while, I've been known to leave my car there. And, well, but at any rate, everyone who comes here to the train station, including a couple of homeless people who we've kind of gotten to like, well, one woman in particular. And again, she's very polite and comes by with her cart and gets a sandwich and a hot coffee and smokes a cigarette. So we have our own little community down here, and we're all at work. The homeless woman is not, and I hope it's because either she got herself or one of the good programs that's out there like Choice helped her. We also have, if you look inside the bus station, you've got people there. You've got the car rental place. They're at work today. And so, too, I'm looking at a Bluebird taxi. I'm sure that they're in there because some of their taxis are here. But it is a smaller crowd today. Now, one of the other things that's going on, in case you're wondering, I'm not sure if it's the city, the bid, or the development department here in New Rochelle or whomever, but workers have been coming by and scrubbing down even the benches in the radio station, in the train station. They've come here and they've scrubbed down the externals. We do the work inside, and I got all kinds of sprays and stuff. We do the work inside here, but they have been really good about spraying our doors and things like that. Now, again, we're not getting a lot of people coming in and out of the radio station. And someone just called in, what do I search for on MyTuner? You can go, once you get a MyTuner, and this is going to scare you, listener, but if you go to Mornings with Bob Marrone, you'll see my face. And once you get over the horror, click on that, and then that app will be on your MyTuner application. We do, as we're coming up now on, oh my goodness, it's almost 8 o'clock, and let's take a look. I don't know, did I lose Jake? He went outside, never to return. I hope the virus didn't get him. Look at this. We actually have a person coming to the train. Can we see that person walking? No, yeah, now they're going to come by. Oh, no, there he goes. Nice blue jacket. See that? We see him, and we see the train he's rushing for. If we do this, see, there it is. But is he the only guy going for the train? Or is that an express? It was an express passing through. But they come running at a brisk pace. All righty. We need to take care of some business, and that we will do. Stay right there. Alrighty, let's reset. We are coming up on, my goodness, it's 8 o'clock. Time flies when you're having fun. This is Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station. We are in the belly of the beast here in New Rochelle, the belly of the COVID-19 virus beast. And people are being careful and taking the proper precautions, but also people are also on their way to work. A smaller number using the train than is usual. But we've tried, and we will continue to try to keep an even keel about this. We got some stories we'll share with you, but first we do need to do the weather. It is 47 degrees right now. Few clouds now. It's going to get up to 55 today, but they're telling us that we'll have some cloudy skies this afternoon. Chilly lows 36 tonight. Thursday, mostly cloudy with a few spotty evening rain showers. The high will be around 53 degrees. The wind out of the east-southeast at 15 miles per hour. And tomorrow night, rain showers. Friday, mostly cloudy with scattered periods of rain showers, some breaks of sun, warmer with highs around 65. Again, I missed that in the last read. I read it wrong. I'm blurry-eyed. I'm virus-filled. No, it's 65. It's going to be 65. A nice day. We should start drying in the afternoon. And getting down to 36 at night. Gee, that's a 30-degree spread. Wowee. All right, Saturday, sunny, breezy with highs around 53 degrees. And the weather, of course, is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit UHGC.com. And the top of the hour is brought to you by United Hebrew of New Rochelle as well, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit UHGC. Did I say .com again? For us, I have it. It's .org now. It's UHGC.org. We're also supported this hour by Aging Issues Management and their partner, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Pena & Con, Dominic's Fine Cigars, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and we are joined, and we'll talk a little bit as we go forward about one of my favorite places to eat, or grab a light snack, or have chicken wings, which, of course, is the Beachmont Tavern. And, of course, the top stories today, and we heard just a little while from County Executive George Latimer as we pass through now 8 601. The top story is that a state of emergency exists here in New York State, and it centers around this very city in which we are broadcasting, New Rochelle, New York. The National Guard is headed here. Now, they're not headed here. They're not going to be running around the streets with guns, and they are here for humanitarian work and very basic stuff. They're going to scrub down buildings or groups or places of gatherings so that they are, to the best one can, make them germ-free, make them virus-free. And in as much as now 3 of the major schools, we have a huge high school here, the high school and 2 grammar schools will be closing at least through March 25th. And perhaps other schools will come online as well, and also the private school Ursuline. There are children who need meals brought to them now because they get their breakfast and lunch via school, and now that won't happen. They'll be bringing food to them. There will be issues because now with those 3 schools and the children not going to school, parents will have other concerns. Will they be able to get to work? Will they be working from home and so forth? So the National Guard will help with those kinds of humanitarian issues. They're not here. When you drive down North Avenue, it's not a checkpoint. You heard George Latimer before. He had dinner last night down in the West End. It's one of the fun things about, the North End. And one of the fun things about doing the news in a situation like this is here I was having my own dinner last night and getting texts that there was a spotting. The county executive still does not sleep. Talk about Godzilla. But what was he doing? He was participating in going to a restaurant, and life goes on. And indeed, it goes on here at the train station and here on Radio Westchester. And we're going to open the phones for a little bit. Now, Jake left and hasn't returned. We don't know why. I want him to flag down some folks, and maybe we'll take the mic out back on the platform, or at least in the front. But there aren't a lot of people out there right now. At 5 o'clock this morning, there was just me, the guard, and less than a handful of people in the building part of the train station. But every once in a while, and again, we've kept the other camera on, you'll see someone walking by the front where the parking lot and the bus depot comes in, and then we turn, and we will continue to do this throughout the show. We look back at where the trains come in so you can get a sense. We are literally in the train station here in New Rochelle, and we're the radio station at the train station, we like to say. So anyway, let me give you just a recap of what's going on. Governor Cuomo announced the plan yesterday to enforce a containment area. That's what it's called, a 1-mile radius around Young Israel Synagogue at the center of the viral outbreak here, and it includes parts of the city of New Rochelle and stretches into the town of Eastchester, both of which are about 20 miles north of New York City. Any large gathering places within that containment area will be required to shut down through March 25th. So, of course, they're talking about churches and synagogues and very large gathering. Restaurants and such are still open up there, but and so too there's a bagel shop that's open, a very famous bagel shop. There are banks there that you may need to go to, and everybody's washing down everything. Now, meanwhile, and it involves us because of Yonkers Raceway horse trainer from Bergen County in New Jersey, he has passed away. His name is John Brennan. Now, this will give you an idea of when it does become fatal, what the issues are. He's 69, and they said that Mr. Brennan, rest his soul, had several underlying medical conditions, including emphysema, diabetes, and hypertension, and had been hospitalized at Hackensack University Medical Center last Friday. He suffered a heart attack Monday night and was revived, but died yesterday morning after going into cardiac arrest. Now, he had a number of different compromising issues. We're sure people who have less and more could be thus affected. But by and large, 80% of the people that get this are going to have very minimal symptoms. And others will have severe cold-like symptoms. Still others, though less so, will have severe flu-like symptoms and perhaps even develop pneumonia. But very few will actually succumb to the illness. So as the governor said, and if I may go on with this, 1 mile is a fairly constrained area. It's a dramatic action, but it is a large or the largest cluster in the country. So that is an important story for us to share. Now, we're going to open up the phones again. We will get to some of our regular guests in a little bit, but if you have concerns or you just want to talk about it or something's going on in your area, now, particularly if you're in the North End, maybe you are in the house and you are quarantined either voluntarily or because your bosses or some public health official said you should be, you feel free to give us a call. We've got two phone lines open right now, 222-3141, 222-3141. And we've opened the hotline for callers as well if you have concerns or questions. And the hotline, we had some people coming to the train now. Let's see where they're going. There they are. The hotline is 999-4006, 914-999-4006. And we will keep you informed. Now, we're not going to keep repeating every hour some of these things that we've said, but we can give you the essence of them. We spent a good deal of time this morning talking about why you shouldn't be afraid, or at least overly afraid. We know how to identify the virus. So far, it's not deadly in the ultimate sense. People are working on vaccines, and we know what it is, and they're working on that now. Will we have the vaccine tomorrow? No. But they're working on antivirals and different things. That's number one. Number two, and again, I'm paraphrasing or rather I'm consolidating or 10 steps. It is a virus that is very susceptible to cleaning, which is to say if you wipe with the peroxide or alcohol or any type of anti-disinfectant, particularly bleach, it will kill the virus. Okay? So please do keep that in mind if you follow the hygiene. Now, something that I've been desperately trying to do, wash your hands. The other thing, and I have trouble with this because I tight my lips so that I won't talk too much when I have a guest on, but try and avoid touching your face. Then you've done all that you can do. Be aware of when you're in large groups, okay? Other than that, rely on the statistics which favor you. Now, we're picking up a little bit of activity here as we pass through 8 o'clock, and this next hour is bound to be very busy, or as busy as we're going to see. Now, the people from the BID, the employees from the city who clean up the train station, they are on the job this morning. One guy's out there sweeping the streets. But again, it is a relatively quiet day here at the train station. Now let's look at who's coming up. We do have guests coming up this morning. It is Wednesday, the 11th, for those of you who like to keep score. And Ivar Hayden should be joining us in just a couple of minutes. Now, I got to sneeze. Now again, oh my God, he's got the coronavirus. No, every morning I sneeze. I have allergies that I wake up to. Stay right there. See, I sneezed. I don't have any kind of virus or fever or anything like that. It's just the way it is. Now, we haven't really touched on any of the broad news, the summary of the news around the planet, so let's cover some of that. A lot of it, obviously, on this March 11th, 2020, does have to do with the coronavirus around the world. Now, over in Europe, soccer games are going to be played, as we may well see in baseball, hockey, and basketball in this country. They're being played in empty arenas. All upcoming professional soccer games in Spain, France, and Portugal, as well as some in Germany, and a European qualifying match in Slovakia. They will be played in empty stadiums because of the virus. And this came via our friends at Fox News. Delta, American, and some other airlines announced reduction in domestic and international service. We knew that. And but with the telegraph over, and I'm a grandparent, so this bothered me a little bit. My coronavirus cure put the grandparents on lockdown. I am not on lockdown. I am at work, and I'm at work here in the belly of the beast. Now, what restaurant workers need during the coronavirus outbreak, The coronavirus has arrived in New York, most likely will not go away anytime soon. Amid this health crisis, as an advocate for low-wage workers, what has kept me awake at night is thinking about thousands of restaurant workers in the state who don't have paid sick leave. Now, one of the things I've noticed is a lot of folks, and this is anecdotal, but a lot of folks going to work here today, all right, we've got some coming from the bus station, some coming from the car lot, and very few being dropped off. Some appear to be professionals, others, and I can't tell by the way people are dressing, but because of youth, a lot of them very young. And I'm wondering if a lot of them just have low-wage jobs and have to work or they can't get paid. It's just a thought. More about that as we go. Now, the Sharks are an NHL team determining plans for home games after a crowd ban. They were still determining how to proceed with 3 scheduled games in San Jose following a local ban put in place by more than 1,000 people. So the San Jose Sharks may well be the first major league team in the United States to have to play before nobody. But again, keep in mind, for those of you who are sports nuts, and most of us are, at least most people I know are, it's a broad statement, but as one place put it in this next story, sports won't be our reprieve for some. So we'll find out if the Sharks are going to play for television or not. Another thing, you can have any number of signs and symbols of what's befallen us as the coronavirus wends its way through our conscience, through our subconscious, through our darkest fears and bleakest pics of imagination. But from indoor events, hopefully they won't tell us we can't go play hockey or we can't go play basketball, the things that keep us sane. Now, I can tell you one thing. When I go to my own game, and it's playoff time, so this is important, and the mid-season playoffs for hockey. We have two of them. I won't be drinking anybody else's water bottle. Now, many New York City schools have moved parent-teacher conferences to phone or video phone. And people are stealing. When they go into the doctor's office, people are stealing hand sanitizer and surgical masks from doctor's offices because of coronavirus fears. Now, some of the other news. Let's see what else we have. Crimes. Oh, my goodness. Now, this, talking about sports, a report this morning, former NFL tight end Kellen Winslow, his lawyers argue he should get no more than 12 years in prison for being convicted of rape and other sex crimes because it was driven by brain injuries. Now, that's interesting because, as I always say, when people go crazy, why don't they throw, computers out windows? Why does it lead to violence or sex crimes? I'm not quite buying this one yet, but I'm also not quite selling. I'd like to know more. Meanwhile, speaking of the NFL, the deadline for applying franchise and transition tags to free agents has been moved from Thursday to Monday. Again, all this because of the virus. And so that's what we know. And for those of you who are following sports these days, we had a winner and a loser last night. The Rangers got back to their winning ways. They defeated the Dallas Stars by a score of 4-2. And also, the Knicks, although playing so much better under this interim coach, who won't get to stay, he's not a big enough name, but still they lost last night, though, to the Wizards by a score of 122 to 115. Now, the Ohio governor wants to close the NCAA tournament due to virus, but the NCAA is still hesitant. But it did postpone. The Knicks were going to have a Knicks 50th party. And that has been waived as well. Now, Joe Biden, it will now almost be impossible for Bernie Sanders to catch up. Last night, and I'm looking at the numbers as they've come in, Sanders hasn't won any numbers yet. Biden has won Michigan, Missouri, Mississippi, and he's winning in Idaho. He's also won, and he's winning in Washington State and North Dakota. And there are a lot of votes there, or rather delegates that he's picking up. And as the New York Post put it today, Joe Biden continued his march toward the Democratic presidential nomination with another string of commanding primary wins that left Bernie Sanders on the ropes, maintaining the momentum sparked by his campaign-saving win in South Carolina 10 days ago. The former vice president captured Mississippi, Missouri, and Michigan, the night's biggest prize, with 125 delegates up for grabs, and that's before we saw Idaho come in, etc. And just over a week ago, people were saying that Biden was dead in the water, and now he is very much alive. And people were concerned because 4 years ago, when Hillary Clinton was the ostensible front runner, and she was supposed to win Michigan in the polls, she lost to Bernie Sanders, and which led to a lot of tension and animosity between the two camps, which never really went away, and in some cases, based on Hillary's book, not to this day. Now, I got to tell you, I'm not the biggest apologist for the president, but I have to go here. Now, first of all, let's dismiss out of hand the knucklehead on Fox News that said the virus is another hoax, or intimating that, trying to make it political. And, of course, there are the Democrats that will make it political about how the president's handling it. And maybe he made a mistake by cutting back CDC money. But these are, when presidents and other leaders make decisions, they make decisions on probability. Where do I need the money now? What's likely to happen? What's not? I can't be someone who sits here and says, for God's sakes, when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State and in charge of parts of the world, people die, things happen. I'm referring to Benghazi, of course. And maybe she made a bad decision, and maybe that shouldn't have happened, and maybe we hold her as a public official accountable for it, and that's all fair and well. Those are decisions they make. Similarly, if the president cut that budget, well, he did, and he surely didn't do it thinking people would die. That's number one, or that people would get sick. Number two, how could I sit here, or anyone, criticize the president for being inarticulate, but not, though, appreciate the fact that in his, inarticulate way, he's desperately trying to do what someone like George Latimer does better, because he's got the gift of gab, and our governor here is more measured and less impulsive and is getting across. But the president, to be totally fair to him, and forget if you like him or don't, all right, he says things like it will go away, just stay calm. Well, he's right. He doesn't say it as well as he should, and maybe he should get a better spokesperson. But what he's trying to do is say the same thing we've been saying here all morning. Some people are going to get sick. Some people are going to get the virus and have no symptoms, sniffling symptoms, et cetera, et cetera. And some people in a group that includes me from my age or others with compromised immune systems are going to get very ill. Some are going to get pneumonia, and some small segment of them may even succumb to the illness. That's what he's trying to do. That's his job. And I think we can't be, especially now when we should be apolitical, be nitpicking about words that he doesn't use right or ways that he expresses himself. He's just trying to be measured. Let's give him his due, please. And again, we've got to say this, by all accounts, reports came in last night from governors around the country and other people with whom Vice President Pence has been working. They say that he's doing, and a lot of it is probably attributable to the fact that he was a governor himself, doing a very good job of being the lead man, and he has been letting Fauci do most of the medical talking. So let's give credit where it's due, please. Also, this was a live stream coming out for those of us who are Catholic or not. In a live stream mass, Pope Francis yesterday urged Catholic priests to go to the sick people, bringing the strength of God's word, and Italy's national lockdown amid the lockdown due to the coronavirus. Meanwhile, patients in the country surged past 10,000, while deaths from the virus rose to 631. That's 463 a day earlier. So civil protection authorities have noted, but he's trying to say, take it easy. All righty, we go to our first guest of the 8 o'clock hour. He's the very fine city councilman from District 4 here in New Rochelle. Please welcome Ivar Hayden. Good morning, city councilman. How are you?
I'm good, Bob. How are you?
Well, we're glad to hear that you're good. It's a pretty quiet day in the neighborhood here at the train station, relatively. It was about a...
I'm kind of surprised. I'm kind of surprised to hear that, actually. I didn't think... I thought that obviously people are more concerned about riding the trains, but I'm surprised that it's really noticeably quieter.
Well, it had been, I'd say, it was a third off, then it was a half off. Today, I'd say, and it's hard, I'm going to go in the station in a little while and ask before the 9 o'clock break and nose around. Today, I'd say it's about 25% of what it normally is. 30%.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
no, that's a huge difference. That is a huge difference. I wonder if it's true all over the Metro North lines or only the New Rochelle.
Well, likely, but and one of the things we've tried to do here, I don't know if you've been listening, is keep an even keel about it because
sure.
The governor, again, we know it was a humanitarian effort, but just the word National Guard has spooked a lot of people.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I got a lot of phone calls yesterday. Once the word started to leak out, and in fact, I had a couple of people tell me that they had heard on CNN that everyone had to leave New Rochelle at 5 o'clock by 5 o'clock, or they were going to be under lockdown. It's unfortunate the way all these crazy rumors, start to spread, but I think it's certainly very sensible.
Well, yeah,
idea to I mean, it isn't a true lockdown. Obviously, it's not a quarantine or anything like that. And it's a little bit over the top when you call in the National Guard, I think, to do things like disinfect schools and, help deliver some meals, which is all they're doing from what I understand. And for us in city government, we welcome any assistance we can get, but I do think it's a bit over the top.
Well, and I think it was an unintended consequence. George Latimer, who doesn't sleep, yesterday, you knew I was here late last night when we booked, and I started getting texts and tweets. My God, Latimer's in the North End eating in a restaurant. and one of the things he's tried to do, and I think somewhat successfully, is say, hey, life goes on, and trying to leaven that bread, if you will.
No, I think that's absolutely true. And I think that I was at the press conference yesterday afternoon, and I thought our mayor, Noam Rabson, did an excellent job.
Yes, he did.
He spoke really well. I think he hit the right balance between caution and avoiding panic and unnecessary fear. And that's what we have to. That's what we should do as leaders. I think it's important for us to show that we are that we have an understanding, a genuine understanding of what's going on, and doing the correct things that we can to mitigate the situation without making people more and more fearful. This is a serious business, obviously. But I do think if people follow the guidelines, health guidelines, certainly will help the situation. Most younger people will be fine, even if they catch this rather nasty virus. I'm concerned about older people, obviously, and I'm certainly one of those people. So, but it is what it is, and people need to stop being unnecessarily fearful and panicky about these things.
And also a lot of people, I think, one of the reasons that the ridership is down this morning here at the train station is I think a lot of people were told by the bosses, go ahead, work from home or don't come in today, take a few days off.
I think, it's interesting. It's a growing trend, certainly, in any case, and that to me is interesting. I wonder how it's, how viable it is for a lot of people to be able to work from home. Maybe it'll become more of a permanent situation. To have more people do that, which would limit people congested in trains and subway cars and things like that. It's interesting to me. It is. The whole thing is scary but interesting.
You know what? It is very interesting. And as you know, people who do what I do, and I know family sometimes gets troubled by it, these are the days when we realize we have more value than we usually do. Than just a talking head or a voice in terms of giving out information. One of the most interesting things for me here sitting at the train station is wondering the people who are going to work, are they in jobs where if they don't show up, they don't get paid? Are they in
Well, that's
healthcare?
obviously, yeah.
And
That's
so
a big concern.
I can't help but
That's a
wonder
big
every time
concern.
someone passes. In fact, I've left on. You've been here. You've been on our guest camera. We're leaving that camera open even with no guests to see what's going on out there. And if you're looking now, you see that it's very quiet in the parking lot. And behind me here, where the trains come in, there's not a lot of people running as they usually are from the parking
Yeah.
lot. Again, there are people still going. So I'm wondering every time I see someone, why are you going to work today? Again, for people who do what I do, this is why we do it. It's the value of
No,
it.
absolutely right, and I am concerned about people who are, certainly hourly wage earners and people like that. I was glad to hear the federal government talking about trying to do something about that. People can't go to work. That's a serious issue if they can't get paid. That's one of the big problems. And the other problem that wasn't discussed, as far as I know, is still that testing and healthcare for this particular disease need to be covered. And there's got to be some national program for that. You can't have people not going to the hospital and continuing to spread the disease because they can't afford to go.
That's horrible.
They have no health care or health insurance, and that's something that has to be dealt with. It's got to be dealt with right away.
That's a chicken as well as funding for the CDC, et cetera. Those are chickens that are definitely coming home to roost. In every crisis, whether it was the hostage crisis back in 79, 9/11 or whatever, things evolve from it that stay in terms of better habits, changes, and almost always that's the case. We hope that happens here. I mean, if you remember after the hostage crisis, we had whole TV programs that were Nightline. Remember it used to be that guy Ted Koppel. He was on every night talking about, and on day 451 of the hostage, and it led to a whole new form of news in radio.
No, that's true.
There were radio
That
programs.
is true, yeah.
And but also ways that we check people at airports and ways that we deal with public health. Good things always come out of this, one way or another. So, and I do expect to see that. Now, what about business? You're a businessman as well. And again, my guest is Ivar Hyden, City Councilman from District 4 here in New Rochelle. Are there less people in the downtown as well?
I haven't noticed that. We'll see today what it's like. I would say it seemed kind of quiet yesterday. Hard to tell. The weekend Saturday was busy, so I'm really not sure.
And I just want to share.
There was a lot of publicity, about this National Guard coming to New Rochelle yesterday.
Yeah, it shook people up.
Huge publicity.
If I may, Councilman, for people listening who are not in New Rochelle, since we broadcast all over now, the downtown, as opposed to where the problems are, is a very different area. If you think of New Rochelle as a very giant city block, we're shaped like that, a rectangular city block. And the downtown is all the way, in fact, if you keep going, you wind up in the water, is all the way at the south end of town. And where the epicenter of the virus is all the way up at the north end of town at this long rectangle. So it is a very different place. And we're kind of in the middle here at the train station, maybe more towards the south end, in fact.
Right.
So when I asked the councilman about what's going on in the south end, that's why it would be different. So what have you noticed?
Well, I think, as I said, yesterday was a bit quieter, but it's hard to tell. I was so busy all day yesterday answering the phone.
Oh, God, yes.
And talking to people and going out to the press conferences and whatever. But it was, I think there was a little bit, there were fewer people in downtown. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see how it goes. I think it makes perfect sense for people to be careful and to be cautious. And I think this is going to be the way things are going to be for a little bit of a while. And I'm hoping that there's a timeline to this thing that makes some sense, that we can wrap our heads around, and that it starts to peak and taper off at some point. I just have absolutely no idea when that's going to happen.
You know what's
In
funny?
the meantime, people have to, continue with the hand washing and avoid large gatherings and that kind of thing, and hopefully they'll be fine.
Again, well, you and I are of a certain age will remember this. I remember I had just come back from Philadelphia on a trip when the Legionnaire's disease broke out in the hotel down there in I forget what it was, in the early 80s. and we didn't even know what it was. I remember Ebola. I remember, of course, 9/11, all these different things. And you know what the funny thing is? Reality is always so very different than the anticipation of it. And just as you and I are talking today on the phone, when this is all over, we'll still be here and we will have experienced it. And that's the great benefit of being older, is you realize that 99.9% of these things, and we survive.
No, that's certainly true, Bob.
And
let's hope that's the case for both of us.
well, I think so. Now, anything you want to shout out about? I've asked you enough questions.
Yeah. This coronavirus thing has been overwhelming in the sense that it's dominated everything over the last few days. So we actually canceled the city council meeting. The first time I've ever seen that happen. That the city council meeting was canceled yesterday, and it hasn't been rescheduled. Although I assume it'll be rescheduled probably till next Tuesday. But yeah, I think there are plenty of other ongoing issues that we're dealing with in the city, but this seems to have just taken the forefront and taken over everything.
Well, I could tell you,
a new affordable housing policy for the city. We're working on some more community involvement in the DRI process, which is the state process of the Lincoln Avenue Carter and Memorial Highway and all of that. Working on several major issues, and of course, waiting for the zoning to be talked about and reopened on the overlay zones. Since they're all built out at this point for our development process. So this is it's an interesting time. I mean,
what is?
We were talking yesterday about financing. If things continue poorly along the economic track because of this coronavirus business, how does that affect the development? I think we have many projects already in work that have been funded already that have their funding streams in place, and those should be fine. It certainly might affect things going forward.
Well, it might. Although you know what's interesting, people tend to think and view people and things in a binary way, and they're not binary. There are a lot of people who don't
they're
like.
They're not binary at all. You're
right.
Exactly right.
Well, and here's my point: a lot of people don't like the president, and a lot of people, of course, do. But if this president has shown one proclivity that people ought to be encouraged by, and perhaps too much so, he worries about the economy, it seems, almost more than anything. And one should probably take heart and forget your politics for a moment. And even as he would want to be reelected, as he should, he's got to be thinking long and hard and have his staff thinking long and hard for the purposes of being reelected, if you're cynical, but for the purposes of helping the country. He's got to be thinking long and hard about not letting this coronavirus torpedo his economy.
I think you're being overly generous.
But I'm also, but I threw in the cynical bone.
I totally understand.
Yeah, but even if you're cynical,
but I don't think he cares about the economy for the country. I think he cares about his personal wealth. I also think he is. I don't want to get into it. I mean, I think he only cares about his own.
No, that's true. But
anybody else.
Ivar Hayden, Councilman Ivar Hayden, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but therein, as Shakespeare said, lies the rub. What did Abraham Lincoln once say? If it's a bee on the back of a donkey that's pulling that plow, rather, I ain't swatting the bee off.
No, I understand, and I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And if it's a,
I'm not saying
if it's a side benefit for all of us, that Donald Trump is who he is, then okay.
I'm not saying he's Mr. Rogers. I don't think he's going to come out tomorrow night. Welcome to the neighborhood. But you got my point. So Ivar Hayden, that's
something else for me. But I don't know. I'm not. We know each other pretty well, and I don't tend to be an extreme political party person, one way or the other. To tell you the truth, I'm a lifelong Democrat and tend to be certainly to the, a bit more to the center left. But I've never seen anything quite like this guy.
Oh no, none of us
the
have.
response
No,
to the coronavirus is just,
I understand.
just inane, that he's a genius and that he can deal with this. Oh, it's just such
No,
nonsense.
believe me,
It really
I
makes me
understand. But again, it's just like stomach acid. Stomach acid is a horrible thing, but so long as it stays in your stomach, it gets good things done. So
yeah. No, hey, listen. Let's see how it plays out. I certainly am hopeful. The press conference yesterday that I saw at the federal, at the White House was actually the first one I've seen in forever maybe, where he had competent people standing there talking about the issues and how to deal with it. And it gave me a little bit of hope, at the federal level. So
it's funny you said that.
That's encouraging.
Because I was going to say one can hope. Hey, on a lighter note, but also a true note, one thing that was still in full operation, all the digs in the city holding up traffic.
Oh, yeah.
There were more than ever yesterday. There may not be people on the streets, but they're digging up everywhere. My goodness.
No, they are digging up everywhere.
Oh, my God.
And I imagine that's going to continue. I can't see that kind of work stopping.
No, but I'm glad it's happening now when there's not a lot of traffic.
Not as much traffic. Well, I am concerned, going forward, I'm very, very concerned about existing local business, restaurants, retail, whatever there is. This is, we were having a difficult enough time with just the construction and the digging up of the streets for new infrastructure and whatever. Now with this, if people don't come out at all, this is going to be a very serious financial hit for all small business people, as well as for those hourly workers and people who don't get,
I'm hopeful that
paychecks.
Some sponsors I have lined up are going to stay committed. Councilman Ivar Hayden, always thoughtful. Thank you very, very much for making time for us this morning.
Talk to you soon.
Take care. And, of course, I know you've been hearing beep beeps, but that's because of so I can hear if another call is coming through, and that is going to be A.J. Woodson in just a few minutes. You will hear the ring. Right now, we picked on the channel. What picket means. I hope we didn't get pickpocketed. Anyway, I'll explain what I was reading there. All righty, folks. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk with A.J. Woodson and talk a little Mount Vernon politics, and we'll stray away from the virus. That ought to be some stray away from the virus this morning. It is 48 degrees on its way to 55 today. It's nice and sunny. It will give way to clouds later today, getting down to 45 or so, 36 actually tonight, partly cloudy. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy with a spotty evening rain shower. And why not? A little rain to change the mood around here, I guess. Anyway, partly cloudy, chilly lows 36 tonight. Thursday, mostly cloudy with a few spotty evening rain showers, highs around 53. Thursday night, scattered showers again, 42. Friday, check this out. Mostly cloudy, scattered rain early. Some breaks of sun, though warmer. Highs getting up to 65, and it should start drying out as we get into the afternoon. Friday night, a few clouds with lows around 36. Saturday, sunny and breezy. Highs around 53. And the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. And this bottom of the hour at 8:39, as we approach that, is Aging Issues Management. They support us, the law firm of Pena & Con, Dominic's Fine Cigars, plug-in virtual reality, and our friends at the Beachmont Tavern. And we go back to the telephone. We're standing by one of our favorite publishers. He's the editor-in-chief, actually, of Black Westchester Magazine. Please welcome A.J. Woodson. Good morning, A.J.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
I love that. You have this signature thing. I don't have any signature thing other than a sneeze or two when we open up. Hey, before we get into the political issues that we enjoy so much, or not, how is this virus issue and what you're reading and seeing about New Rochelle, how is it affecting Mount Vernon?
I think, well, a couple of things. I think we really have to pay attention to the facts over fear. There's too much misinformation going out. There's just too many things that, people are just, there's too much misinformation as
Absolutely. Yep.
I think that's the biggest thing. I listened the other day when you had Janelle on, I agree with one of the things she said. It's making people wash hands like they never washed it before. Like, I mean, I'm washing my hands several times a day, and just like as soon as I come in the house, and just times I might not have before. Now I'm really, it's making me, remember to, wash my hands before I do anything, and after doing everything. You know what I mean? So
you just reminded me to put my Purell on my hands. See, I got my Purell, and
oh yeah, I'm packing Purell too.
Yeah, you're back. By the way, 2 drops for $1. Come in.
Yeah, I'm packing my Purell too. And then here's something. Well, let's see. It's a little joke.
I'll take it.
Not a joke you can tell, but a joke I can tell them. So everybody's asking me about the coronavirus. I was like, oh man, the coronavirus doesn't affect black people. Now, if it was the Henny virus, oh man, black people would be dropping like flies.
Well, what's the Henny virus? Henny?
Instead of Corona to drink, Henny as in Henny.
I was actually now Hennessy. I worked with a guy. We can go there, Merrill Lynch. We used to call him Hennessy. He was a guy. He was from Jamaica, actually. And for reasons, and he said, I love my Hennessy, Bob. As soon as I get home, I pour some Hennessy. He lived out in the Rockaways, and his nickname was Hennessy. Everybody called him Hennessy, and that wasn't his name. His name was, he had like a real British name, as a lot of people do who come from the islands, like Richie Anderson. Yeah. No, I like that. No, I could have told that.
People in the black community get it. It's like, yeah. The coronavirus is not affecting black people, but if it was the Henny virus, boy, black people be dropping like flies.
Well, let me just give you one, then. I guess, let me see, what can I say? Well, I got the pasta virus.
Oh, wow. And then I did tell you when I was talking to you on the phone, I said if there's a bright side, I mean, you try to look for a bright side of anything. From what I understood, out of the over 80,000 people that were affected in China, over 60,000 of them have already come through it. So
I did that.
14 days, they don't have it no more. And, that was the big scare when you heard those big numbers in China. Yeah. Now to hear that those big numbers are fine now, you know what I'm saying? That should shed a little, better situation on everybody else.
I'm so glad that you, as a newsman yourself, came on with this tone this morning, because we spent the first hour of the program trying to add leaven, balance, temper to temper the story without being unnecessarily optimistic, but also not frighten people. Now, as you know where we are, I'm here in the belly of the beast, and the train is, there are not a lot of people going to the trains today. Maybe 20-30% of what usually is here, if that. So it's very quiet here. But as you well know, these are the reasons, beyond loving news and politics, this is what we do this for, getting the information out, So kudos to you for your tone in your city and as you come here on Radio Westchester.
Now it's affected me. It affected business though, because there were two events.
Yeah.
And one of the advertisers was taking a full-page ad, one of them was taking a quarter-page ad, and they were having events that were going to take place at Mount Vernon High School. And because of the coronavirus scare, and because of precautions and everything, their events had to be canceled.
Oh, yeah.
Which means their ads had to be canceled. So,
I understand.
It hit me in the pocket a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
I'm working around the clock right now to get the paper out for this weekend.
Yeah, I made a sale yesterday that was probably a third of what it would have been had this not been happening. And, you worry about the other people that you're lining up. But, we did want to do some news today. Latimer was on earlier. Also, by the way, you got to love George. Last night, I worked late, as you know, in this business. So you wind up, people forget, you also got to do the books. You got to get prepared for the next day. So I went out for a late hamburger in my phone, but over by the Beachmont, and my phone starts going off. George Latimer spotted in the zone, in the so-called protective zone, and he was eating at one of the restaurants up there to show people not to be too frightened. I don't think the guy sleeps.
Wow! I give him a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, I knew you would. Well, we got you on.
Did you ask him about Memorial Field?
Yes, I did want to talk about Memorial Field. I wanted to talk about that piece, and I also wanted to talk about last week the fact that the chicken hawk himself, the comptroller for the state of New York, may actually show up, and which we will call an Elvis sighting if his timid organization actually does what they said they would do. And if you sense the dripping sarcasm, it's intended.
I'm with you with the dripping sarcasm. The state controller, the AG, the district attorney, they have all failed the city of Mount Vernon.
Yes.
I think they failed Westchester, period.
Mm-hmm.
But they've all failed specifically the city of Mount Vernon and several cases of corruption where, there have been calls for the state controller from when Richard Thomas was councilman and Ernie Davis was mayor. There's been since we've been in existence since May of 2015, Black Westchester. There's been calls by the city council. There's been called by again Mayor Thomas. There's been called by the controller Maureen Walker complaining about something. The IDA and the IDA, the Urban Renewal Agency. There have been so many calls for federal intervention in the city of Mount Vernon. And
Lyndon Williams has sent many memos.
Lyndon Williams, right. So, and for some reason, the federal government and the county district attorney's office have been visibly absent in any form of corruption, in prosecuting or investigating any form of corruption in the city of Mount Vernon. And even when they were investigating, I think, while the AG's office took applauded itself for stamping out corruption, I think that they failed in the case of Richard Thomas. If all the money and all the things that they supposedly had on him for the plea deal that he was offered and it was accepted, I think they dropped the ball.
Well,
I'm not wishing jail time on anybody. Let me be clear about that. But they, what Snyderman had said he had, and the way the AG's office was talking in the beginning, you just knew people were going to jail, and the fact that in the case of Lawrence Bakari, the grand jury indicted him for spending money for allegedly spending money on Richard Thomas legal bills, and the grand jury did not indict Richard Thomas.
Well, you know why though? Because the thing that they got Picaro on was that he misrepresented why he needed the money. Because had he stuck, at least in my view, to the original premise, which now, frankly, the mayor is being vindicated on, that the controller's out of control, so we got to pay bills out of other pots. So whether or not that's acceptable, he evidently presented that way.
Right, but this was supposed to be for his personal reasons.
No, I understand, but then you get into
which is something that she said ahead of time, and everybody looked at her crazy, that she's refusing to pay for Richard Thomas' personal legal fees.
Yeah, now I got a slightly different view of this, because one of the things that, if you look at it from another point of view, they indicted Richard Thomas on the knowable things that we all know he definitely did. And my guess is if he did other invitable stuff and they were going to do a full investigation, a lot more people, not necessarily, or perhaps including Richard Thomas, were going to go down. And for all of Richard's issues, he has been vindicated by at least his dealings with the comptroller. Now, one cannot, what he may have done to get around that may have not been appropriate, may be illegal. It's for others to figure out. But yesterday, and I just wanted your reaction to this, the new mayor actually said that she would accept a control board taking over the finances of Mount Vernon. And that was one of the greatest vindications that Richard Thomas will have ever gotten, separate from what else he might have done.
Well, his plea deal was a victory. I wrote that it could be seen no other way but a victory for Richard Thomas, not a victory lap for the AG's office who said, "Oh, we're stemming out corruption." I don't think that's what they did, and I think that there was more corruption, and Maureen Walker complained about the IDA and the urban renewal not handing their numbers every year. Like their audits are independent, and then they hand their numbers to the controller's office, and the controller's office hands her numbers and their numbers in as a complete package. And she couldn't hand her numbers in. She had a town hall about this, and the lawyer was there that represented her, explaining it to the people that there had been no audit handed in from the IDA and urban renewal, even back then. So and then there's corruption that predates.
All of them. We're on the same page. We're on the same page.
When Sean Patterson Howard was the planning commissioner and the executive director of the Urban Renewal Agency under Richard Thomas administration, the federal government requested information on the former planning commissioner, Jerry Post, and she supposedly handed those over, which led to her dismissal from Richard Thomas.
Hey, let me ask you this.
There was a fear that they didn't know what else she had handed over, and they wanted to stop her access altogether.
It's so interesting. It's almost as if, and this is just one way to look at it, there's no way they could have gone after Richard Thomas without all the trees in the Democratic apparatus being looked at. You see, one of the things that, as I piece together some of the pieces of this puzzle, if Letitia James is serious, okay, and if the article written in the LOHUD generates anything, and the Attorney General actually does his job, there is a cloud that hangs over the Democratic Party apparatus in Westchester that is also going to have to be put under a microscope. And this is my gut now. I don't think even Letitia James wants that.
Well, again, okay, this part is rumor. And I want to be clear, as the editor of Black Westchester, when I say things, this is things that I don't have corroborated.
Well, and so be careful in how you lay it out.
Right. So I wanted to say, but there has been a rumor that not much is going to be done because Mayor Sean Patterson Howard and Council President Lisa Copeland and Attorney General Tish James are sorority sisters.
Oh, no, I didn't. Well, that's just that. Yeah, we have to put that on a page 6 kind of thing. But you know what is interesting?
So there's been a lot of rumbling about what will actually be done and how things are being done and why things are being done. And again, we hope to get to the bottom of all of this, but again, Mount Vernon is that super onion with extra layers. That no
with extra layers, you can't get this at McDonald's.
right. It's like the blooming onion. You just keep peeling.
Yeah, one of those big frizzled ones that you get like at the big steakhouses. You could be peeling from. They look like an anemone. And my guess is the editor-in-chief of Black Westchester magazine. So you know what I find interesting?
No matter how many layers you peel back, there's always more layers you can't even get close to. Like shark's teeth. Hey,
you know what's interesting? This is one for you to chew on. Okay. Mm-hmm. The former mayor, Richard Thomas, the current mayor, Sean Patterson Howard, and I can say this categorically. I mean, I can be corrected if someone could correct me. Because whenever they come on, I ask them about it. Richard Thomas has said categorically on this show and show to his Sean Patterson, let the chips fall where they may, bring in everybody, look at the whole city. I'm not afraid. Now, for people that are so close to the levers of power, one guy's hands have just got off it, the other woman's hands are now on it. What does that tell us? That's a head scratcher because they're not afraid. And a guy who was in so many rumors, Richard Thomas, he did this, he did that, he did the other thing. He says, go ahead, look at it. Why?
Well, I think if the AG's office, the state controller, because then I believe if they investigate and they find anything, they hand it over to the AG's office to prosecute. I believe that's how it goes. Which is what Richard Thomas complained about his investigation, saying that the AG's office did not have the authority to investigate and without. He went and fought that whole their standing and they having the authority. So if the investigation actually goes the way it's supposed to go, or the investigation is supposed to go, and it goes as deep as it's supposed to go, I believe that we're going to find still corruption bubbling into this administration, corruption that took place over the Thomas administration, and corruption that goes back to the Ernie Davis administration. And I believe that you're talking about chips fall if they may. And like I say, when people ask me to do a story, I tell them, well, I'm going to go wherever the facts go, even if that involves you.
Oh yeah, that's why I said that to Richard Thomas.
Be careful to ask me to look into it, because just because you asked me to look into it does not mean that if it's going to go wherever the facts go, including you.
Do you know who gets a sort of a free pass here? And I don't mean this in any unkind way, because he's such a nice man. But no one has ever accused Clinton Young of any ill ideas. But I have to say this: during that administration, you couldn't even get a phone picked up when you called City Hall. So,
Black Westchester unfortunately started after he was voted out, in the middle of the Ernie Davis administration that followed him. So
kind of the Fredo of the group.
Right. So even though some of the things that we talk about lead back to even then, it's hard to get people. This is what you find in Mount Vernon. So during Ernie Davis administration, you would find the dirt thrown at the Clinton administration. During the Richard Thomas administration and Richard Thomas as city councilman, you would find dirt thrown at the Ernie Davis and Clinton Young administration. During the Sean Patterson Howard administration, the interim Andre Wallace administration and Andre Wallace as city council, who ironically had the same position Richard Thomas, sitting over the mayor's office was one of his things he had to do, and he was very critical, like Richard Thomas was, of the mayor. It just happened to be Richard Thomas next. But I think there's just so much corruption. Andre Wallace had a saying, and I've kind of
go ahead.
Stolen it for myself. Things have been done wrong for so long, people think it's right at this point.
Well, that's very true. But, if I may just throw, as we move towards the end of our interview, just a touch of ironic humor in this. If all of the dirt throwing that went on among the 5 mayors you just mentioned, if they'd have used the dirt Memorial Field, we wouldn't need to clean it up.
Well, and here's something, and again, not throwing anybody under the bus.
Sure, go ahead, Sarah.
But just pointing out facts. You mentioned County Legislator Lyndon Williams.
Yes.
Okay, so in the Memorial Field debacle,
yes,
or the Memorial Nightmare, as Richard Thomas likes to say,
it's the Halloween. It's the Halloween that keeps coming up out of the lake. Go ahead.
Right. So you had multiple mayors. You had Clinton Young, Ernie Davis, then Clinton Young, then Ernie Davis, then Richard Thomas, then Andre Wallace, now Sean Patterson Howard. Yeah. As far as mayor, you've had a series of different city council persons over this whole thing. You've had 2 controllers over this whole thing. You've had 2 county executives over this whole thing. But you know who you had during this whole process that was there the whole time?
Who?
County Legislator Lyndon Williams.
Oh, yeah.
He has been the county legislator throughout the whole thing. And he would like to say that Astorino didn't give the money to Ernie because he did not like Ernie. Well, when Damon and myself, we used to have an organization called Boys to Men.
Yes.
At Cecil Parker, where you take the young men around. And one of the stops we took them to was the county executive's office. And
yes.
County Executive Astorino pulled me and Damon to the side, and we were talking, and according to him, not saying it's true or not true, but according to him and out of his mouth, it was Lyndon Williams who was holding up the money while Mayor Davis was in office. It was not him that had a problem. It was Lyndon holding up the money.
Have you asked Lyndon? Have you asked him about this?
I haven't got a peep. He claims that that's not true. I've also heard similar rumblings under the current county exec, and one or two of Lyndon's fellow county legislators also said the same thing. So whether it's true or not, the one thing that I'm saying, the one person who has been involved in the whole ordeal as as an elected official, when there's been multiple people in every other position, he has been the one person that has been in office through all of this.
Well, rest assured, we will reach out to him. We will reach out to him. We've got to go. We will reach out to him and get him on the record. But what a great job. He's my friend as well, but he's the editor-in-chief of Black Westchester magazine. Great job today. Stay safe, wash your hands, and get that newspaper out, A.J. Woodson.
Yes, and you stay out of the contaminating zone.
Thank you so much. A.J. Woodson, editor-in-chief, Black Westchester magazine. We're going to be back in a moment with Harlan Ullman. That was interesting. If you noticed, we had to switch cameras, folks, and you're only going to get a side view of my funny-looking face, because the way the sun came shining through from the east, it blurred it out the camera that normally would show me from face up. So I don't have time to go and draw the oh, no, see what it does? See, it makes me look faded out. I will let you see that. Why not? It's real. It's radio. No, I'm going to cover it up. Anyway, we're going to go to the weather, and then we're going to talk with Harlan Ullman, and we have a lot to talk with Harlan Ullman about. But first, let's take a look at the weather. And weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit UHGC.org. A beautiful morning in the neighborhood, 48 degrees, and we'll have sun right through into the afternoon, and then we'll have some cloud. Now tonight, partly cloudy, chilly low around 36. Thursday, mostly cloudy, spotty evening. Now, evening rain showers, an average temperature about 53, maybe 55. Cloudy, scattered showers at night as well, getting down to 42. Friday, mostly cloudy, again, some scattered periods of rain, but it'll break in the afternoon, warmer with highs around 65. And our time with Harlan Ullman is supported by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn. Plug in virtual reality and the tavern at Beachmont Tavern. All righty, you know who Harlan Ullman is. He's been with us for a couple of years. He's a senior advisor to the Atlantic Council. He is an author. His most recent book, Anatomy of Failure, How America Loses the Wars It Starts. He is world respected as a national security expert. He's advised governments, NATO, generals, foreign ministers, and he is a columnist for UPI. In fact, we have his latest piece in front of us, and the piece that he put out just the other day, just 2 days ago, Cronkite, Desert One, and Corona, One Missing Consequence. Please welcome Harlan Ullman. Good morning, busy man.
Well, good morning. How are you doing in New Rochelle, the ground zero?
Oh, we are ground zero. But you know what's interesting? You as a man who's worked, in the media as well and teaching in war colleges and everything, this is what we do this for. I mean, I am here in the heart of the train station with all these cameras looking out, and we have about 20% of the ridership we normally do. And just an observation for your edification. While I understand, and we've had many public officials on this morning, county executives very involved, the governor declared a national emergency because he wanted, he called for this ring around the epicenter because, and he called in the National Guard because he wanted the manpower. But that line crossing has created an awful lot of consternation, to say the least. And we've spent a good part of today's show leavening that bread, if you will. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I don't want this to be the Mercury Players and War of the Worlds in 1938.
Thank you.
But what's happening right now in New York, Florida, California, and especially the state of Washington, I think are going to be very illustrative of what we can face. The state of Washington is potentially a perfect storm. It has the largest homeless population per square whatever, a large number of drug addicts because of its policies. The mayor of Seattle yesterday said she would not be surprised within the next couple of weeks if there are as many as 70,000 cases. Governor Jay Inslee said that worst case, we're talking about potentially hundreds of thousands of cases in Washington. And I will make a bet that by the end of the week, the city of Seattle will be closed down or there will be rather draconian measures taken. Now, whether those are warranted or not, I don't know. One of my concerns, and I've expressed this before, I was watching the full press conference yesterday with Vice President Pence and his team of experts around him. And I must say that for somebody who is not necessarily a Pence fan, I was impressed with the vice president because he was reasonable, he was confident, and he referred to experts. And so in terms of what everybody came out and said, people could relax. The thought that was going through my mind, and sometimes I can be very cynical, Bob, with the so-called infamous 5 o'clock follies in Saigon during the Vietnam War, where these very polished briefers would come out and tell everybody how we were winning the war, and we weren't. At the moment, everybody was very favorable to Governor Newsom of California and Governor Inslee of Washington in terms of their remarks about how well they were talking, how well they were related, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what happens if this virus really spreads? And now you have governors who are really complaining, saying, we're not getting this, we're not getting that. How long will this civility last? And so I think we're at a very critical point. There was a piece in the Washington Post yesterday by Tom Bossert, who was the former National Homeland Security Advisor for President Trump, who said, we have 2 weeks to clamp down on this, shut schools, take the most draconian measures. If we don't, we're going to be in big trouble. Now, I know Tom, he's not a doctor, but he's been in this business for a long time. And when that question was raised by one of the press, Vice President Pence rightly downplayed it. But we have an issue here, and the issue is, and it's a contradiction, and this is independent of whether you like Donald Trump or not, but any administration has a responsibility to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, but only to a point. Because if it turns out that things are really worst case and Dr. Fauci actually knew that things were going to get a lot worse and didn't say so? Was he obligated to make that point in advance of the crisis? I do not have a good answer. I'm not being critical, but this is a huge dilemma that every government faces. And so I think we're at a turning point here over the next week or so. What happens with this virus? If it expands exponentially, then we have some real problems. I am told, and the CDC estimates that during the H1N1 flu, some 40 million Americans were infected. Now, obviously, the death rate was relatively low because it was the flu. Is that a model? Is that not a model? Will the Chinese example become the model when the Chinese impose draconian measures, and they appear to have, if not eliminated, they certainly have slowed down the rate of infection? Or is Italy or Britain going to be the model? I was in Romania, as you know, last week. I arrived on the 24th of February when the first case of the flu of the coronavirus was reported in Italy. That was only 10 days ago. And so in less than 2 weeks, the country went from a few cases down to being shut down. So we're at a very, very I'm not sure the word I want to use, but we're at a critical point, an inflection point one way or the other. And we will see how this turns out. And I'm not being optimistic or pessimistic. The administration, I think, is doing the best it can. My concern is that, as we mentioned before, Bob, there's very little connective tissue between the government and all the necessary first responders at the state and local level. Governors will be left to doing what they need to do. And if this thing does get worse, it's really going to be up to every individual American to take the basic precautions, because this thing is preventable. But then you have the psychological effects of a widespread pandemic, what that does to the economy, et cetera, creates further psychological damage. And I'm being here as objective without trying to be particularly negative as I can.
No, I understand, and we're all trying to do the same thing. Our guest, internationally renowned national security expert Harlan Ullman. One observation: the governors, and this includes former Governor Mike Pence, the vice president. Governors have behaved, at least upon my layman's observation, very well.
I agree with that.
Includes Governor Cuomo here in New York, the county executive, even the mayor here in Rochelle. And the president sometimes inarticulate, but trying to keep it balanced. The only thing is when he said, but we don't like that governor. This is not the time to say you don't like a governor. I mean, it's absurd language.
Well, it's up to the governors, because the governors have executive authority.
Yes.
On some ways even more than the president has, because they can get things done.
Yes. Now, I need to ask you this, because the way you've laid it out, yes, we need to define what very bad means, because some of the underlying numbers, even from China now, where the virus seems to be peaking or ebbing, in the worst case scenario, still 80% of the people are not going to be terribly ill. But people of a certain age and people with certain pre-existing conditions, for them it could be catastrophic. How do we describe bad? How do we, what is that definition?
I think we stay away from definitions.
Pardon?
I think that we stay away from definitions.
Go ahead.
The whole issue has got to be on containment and on preventing further contagion, and then whatever people can do to protect themselves. That's got to be the issue, and I think statistics will not only confuse things, but they're going to scare people. The fact that, say, 40 million people got the H1N1 flu is a scary statistics, because that's, 12% of the population. That may or may not be relevant to today. The fact that 80%, the chances of you getting the virus right now are slim, and if you do get it, 80% is probably a better probability of having a recovery that's gentle, as opposed to many forms of other diseases such as cancer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what this does to society, for example, what about the court system in New Rochelle? Is that still working? Question mark. I don't know.
So far.
What do you do about homeless people who are probably among the most vulnerable? And what happens if it spreads to the homeless community? Are you going to regard them as lepers? And how do you deal with that?
Hey.
So on a very, very basic level, there are huge societal questions, and my sense, Bob, is that the disease, even in a worst-case scenario, the secondary and tertiary consequences for society are liable to be greater than the physical impact of the disease.
You are so right, and I say this only half lightheartedly. Right now, people who know me, all of a sudden, it's, hey, he's the broadcaster from New Rochelle.
Right.
Wow. And I got family calling me up. You're a carrier. I'm all of a sudden I'm Typhoid Bobby. It's an interesting.
Well, but
dynamic.
think about it.
Yeah.
Are we going to have the political conventions?
Yeah.
This summer, we have a very big birthday party coming on with my wife in April. Are we going to hold it? The Atlantic Council has its major gala in May, in which over 1,000 people are invited. Mm-hmm. Is that going to be scheduled? All these sorts of things, and then you get into the even further. Are the houses of government, the Congresses and houses of representatives of states, and even in the United States, are these going to be meeting? There's already been questions from members of Congress. Should we adjourn right now? Nancy Pelosi has said courageously, we're the captains of the ship, and we're going to stay with the ship. Mm-hmm. But, who knows in a worst-case scenario? Remember, about a dozen years ago when the anthrax scare came through Washington, people were afraid to open their letters. Congress shut down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so everybody who gets a newspaper in the morning from a newspaper carrier, are you going to wash your hands immediately after you read the newspaper? And are you going to be thinking that when you open up one of your letters, there could be an unintended virus? These are the secondary and tertiary effects here that are very, very real. And so the best advice, obviously, is to do the best you can to protect yourself.
Absolutely. You know what's interesting? By the way, two things. My esteemed guest, one of the top people in the world, Harlan Ullman, at your national security. But let me share with him domestic security advice. If you can't do that birthday for your wife, do not forget to reschedule it, because you'd rather have the coronavirus than forget your wife's birthday, sir. Now, moving on from that, I wonder, and I guess you wouldn't know this statistic either, I wonder how many people have the virus and we'll never know. Because lots of people have colds. I see them walking by the radio, the station here. They have little sniffles. They have the flu, the regular flu. At what point do we stop slicing and dicing? Can't test everybody.
Well, that's the real issue, and the only way you do that is through testing. Yeah. And quite frankly, the feds have made a mess of the testing. Whether there really are a million kits out there or not, and how accessible. I mean, when you hear the advice, call your doctor. How many Americans don't have a doctor?
Right.
Who do you call? How many Americans have no health insurance?
You know what I was hoping? I had this, I was talking to the county executive earlier today and others. I'm wondering if one of the benefits that might come from this, and benefits always do, no matter how things happen in the world, at least in my lifetime, is that people will realize that everyone has to have a doctor, that healthcare has to be accessible. Do you think there'll be any wake-up call for that?
Well, the other larger wake-up call is the environment.
Oh, God, yes.
And climate change. Climate change is a crisis.
Of course it is.
And people may deny it. They say it's only a change in the weather patterns. That's nonsense. When the virus broke out in Italy, some 20% of the Antarctic ice cap melted. Mm-hmm. It was warmer in Antarctica than it was in Los Angeles
it was
on a particular day.
It was, yes.
And as I point out in my piece on Cronkite, in my piece earlier before my piece last week on the Katrina virus, this should be a wake-up call for the whole issue of climate change, because that is a much more serious threat, and the question is not whether but when. And so I don't think that's going to happen because there are too many deniers. The other problem we face is that that the virus is also going to become politicized. About 41% of Americans, namely those who believe that Donald Trump is doing a good job, believe the federal government is doing a good job in coping with the virus because they support Donald Trump no matter what. And even in the face of overwhelming medical advice to the contrary, if that proves itself, I wonder if these people are going to change their minds. Of course, you go back in history, and almost 40% of America hated FDR no matter what. Uh-huh. So you have had these polarizing splits in American society. But at some stage, the facts and what's happening medically have to register in terms of what we do. Now, there's another point that needs to be made. I actually think that these notions, these plans, for example, to give a payroll holiday tax cut, or at least a holiday for payroll taxes. Payroll taxes amount for about $1 trillion in terms of federal revenues, which is something on the order of 20% of the budget. That, no doubt, is going to create a huge, huge further gap in our debt and deficit. And while Larry Kudlow, the economic advisor, can say we're going to grow our way out, I don't believe that. The point is that in a crisis, you have no alternative. We need fiscal policy. I'm not sure that this is going to have really much to do in terms of keeping the economy going, but it certainly will be a relief to a lot of people who will not be able to work, who are going to need the money anyway. And so I think for moral as well as economic reasons for individuals, I think that these fiscal policies, which will inflate the deficit and the debt enormously, I think are needed and justified, and I just hope that the government can put in place sensible ones, because we need to deal with this potential economic and fiscal crisis for individuals who will not have the wherewithal to deal with these issues.
The old Wall Streeter in me, and you know full well that these things have a delayed effect. People are not shopping the way they were. People in my business, I talked to one news guy earlier, we're losing ad revenue because the businesses that give us ad revenue are not getting their restaurateurs are not losing money. These things have a ripple effect that affect everything from jobs to the GDP. And then stock prices. So this has to be handled with great, great care, Harlan Ullman. And Harlan Ullman, again, our guest.
What's interesting, the 2008 financial crisis, we had people who were skillful.
Yes.
You know, you had Hank Paulson. You had guys at the Fed who were really very, very knowledgeable. I mean, these were among the most able financiers that America had.
Yep.
This is a much, much greater crisis because it's much broader. This affects all the fabric of society. And whereas I commend the president for putting Pence in charge of this board, I wonder if the board is really got sufficient depth to deal with these issues. I don't think Steve Mnuchin, the Secretary of the Treasury, is a Hank Paulson.
No, he's not.
And so I think there needs to be some kind of broader attempt to bring in the other aspects of society, the other pieces. And I think that's critical, because I think we need to be looking at these secondary and tertiary effects.
And, you know, and these people, there are, as you well know, America has a riches of experts and wonderful people, but generally speaking, they're either apolitical or on the periphery of it, and they need to be consulted. I know Jamie Dimon is a great mind. Right now he's in the hospital. He just had heart surgery. But there are the great minds are out there. And Larry Kudlow's a smart guy, but he was a TV guy in an interesting case. But we need the best and the brightest to step forward.
And the trouble is, in many ways, there could not be a worse choice to lead over this than Donald Trump, because he won't listen. At least if you look at his past history, he's very much molded by his instincts and intuitions, which are not informed by science or fact. You know, he said repeatedly, this is going to go away. People believe him. And this is a time where you need to have somebody who's going to be cerebral, but who's going to listen. And in that regard, I think Mike Pence is doing a fine job, because he defers to the experts.
Do you know one of the things that Barack Obama did not get credit for? The fact that he is thoughtful in that way. Thoughtful. Okay. But
he's also overly cautious. And essentially everything was 50 and a half, 49 and a half.
Well, that's true. Yes.
Toss a coin. So being thoughtful is fine, but you got to be decisive at some stage. And you've got to make up your minds to do things.
Talking with Harlan Ullman, the nationally renowned national security expert. We're talking about the effects of the coronavirus on the economy. Now, what about the election? What about people getting out to vote? This could cause changes there as well. What about the aggregations of people needed to conduct the Supreme Court's business?
Well, we made that point earlier. The recommendation is not to have gatherings of more than 10 or 15 people as this thing unfolds. This is a guess, and I want your listeners to understand that this is a guess, and it's not bound in any real fact, except if you take a look at what's happened in China, and people with whom I've spoken at the NIH who are world-class epidemiologists who believe that in 4 to 6 months this will run its course, irrespective of the damage it may or may not do. And so, we get through the next 4 to 6 months, that's going to be enough, and that means that'll just before the election takes place, so there may not be any effect. Whether that happens or not, we'll see. As I said, I think we're at a deflection point, whether it's this week or next week, but as I said, the places to watch are New York, Florida, the state of Washington, and California to see how this thing expands. And the major contributor prevention we have is the individual American who just has to use common sense to wash their hands, to stay away from people who appear to be coughing, sneezing, whatever, and going about their daily business, showing a sensitivity to the potential contagion of this virus. And then we'll see how it takes its course. But unfortunately, the biggest uncertainty is that all this is unknowable. And when people don't have knowledge and any kind of certainty, it's what spooks the markets, it's what spooks individuals. And the question of whether we shut down schools, do we shut down all sporting events, what do we do, raises all sorts of psychological issues that are going to be natural and that individuals are going to have to deal with them. But we really haven't faced a crisis like this probably since Pearl Harbor, 1941, December 7th. I mean, that was far more devastating than September 11th or even the financial crisis of 2008, because here we were engaged in a war that nobody wanted, that we thought we might even lose. The difference, of course, then was there was an enemy. Pearl Harbor was a long way away. No Americans in continental America had been hurt at all, and we were able to avenge ourselves, and America was able to mass against the threat. The trouble is this virus is invisible, and you can't mass against a certain threat that is invisible and is not subjected to normal ways of being stopped other than through medical precautions.
Harlan Ullman, will there be another point in time, in fact, perhaps it starts now, where in order for the country to survive this as a country, people are going to have to get back on trains and have to get back to work and have to brave the risks with all due precaution? I mean, we can't all just go into our burrows and hide.
The best analogy I can think of growing up in New York in the late 40s and 50s was the polio epidemic. And in New York City, I can assure you that every family who had a child was worried about polio. And so there were precautions taken. Very little was known about the disease then. But people are going to have to get along with their businesses. And my guess is that over the coming weeks or months, as this thing plays itself out, people will develop a sense of self-confidence, realizing if they've got to go to work, they've got to do these kinds of things to take the necessary precautions. And at that stage, I think that the entire public health system will be at a stage where it will be of a greater comfort to individuals because they will have had some weeks or months of experience in dealing with this. So I think that some degree of confidence will return, but that's a matter of time, and it's a matter of how this disease dissipates or how this disease spreads. But you're right, at some stage people will have the confidence to get along their daily lives just saying, okay, there's some small probability if I go out I might get hit by a car, but I'm still going to go to work.
Well, that's what I look forward to. It is 9:28. We're in the midst of our long-form interview with the national security expert Harlan Ullman, and in the second half we're going to talk about some of the other things going on in the world that need not be forgotten. But another one of your expertise, the military. You have been literally the captain of a destroyer. You've been in the military a good part of your life. You teach at military schools. When these gentlemen show up, ladies and gentlemen that show up of the National Guard here, or at ships at sea and in forts all around, fort right up here in Westchester, what about them? They're human beings too. They're going to get sick. How do we contain this and maintain a military? How do we keep it out of our ships where people live in submarines, where people live in close quarters?
Well, I write that in my column.
That's why I'm asking.
What happens if an aircraft carrier of 5,000 people has a coronavirus? You've seen what happened with the Carnival cruise ships. We're just going to have to deal with it. What happens if you have a brigade combat team in Afghanistan of about 5,000 people and somebody becomes sick. We're going to have to do this on a case-by-case basis. The point is that this is not just going to affect us. It's going to affect everybody. And so, for example, in Afghanistan, what makes you think that the Taliban are removed from this particular disease?
Oh, yes.
Or in Iraq or anywhere you name where you have American soldiers and sailors, Marines stationed, this affects everybody. So it's not just the good guys who are going to be infected or affected by all this. And, the military is well disciplined. It dealt with anthrax. It dealt with the prospect of chemical war during the first Iraq and second Iraq wars. So the military is well disciplined, and it's healthy, so it has some very, very real advantages that the rest of society do not have. And so even though this may spread there, I'm less worried because I think the powers of recovery, and I suspect that more than 80% of those who are infected will have virtually no symptoms simply because of the health of the general population of the military. But it's a fair question, and the point is, this is going to happen to the Russian military. It's obviously happened to the Chinese military. It's going to happen to the Taliban. It's going to happen to Islamic State fighters. And in that regard, that probably keeps the playing field more or less level.
That's what I was thinking. It is 9:31. I clipped a story that needs to be talked about because with the coronavirus on the front pages, this is going to be perhaps missed. There was a story in the New York Times yesterday that the president may not be telling us everything about the deal with the Taliban. We do read, for those of us who turn into the deeper pages of the news, that the Taliban is taking all kinds of liberties, the Taliban right now, and doing things that a peace treaty, which now seems to be just a pretext to get the hell out of there, to us average folk. What say you?
Well, on the one hand, this was a desperate attempt. And when we talked about it before, my view was that this had little to no chance of succeeding, but it was a step that had to be taken. Yesterday, the day before in Afghanistan, there were two presidential coronations. Both Ashraf Ghani, who was the elected president, was inaugurated as president, and Abdullah, who's the chief executive, was also inaugurated. So you have a huge continuing split in the Afghan government. As you know, the Afghan government was cut out from these particular negotiations. And so in this particular case, one can be exceedingly critical of the prospects because this is not going to work or it's an extremely long shot. But I think in this case, the president had no option except to try. The issue now is what is Plan B? When President Trump said, well, I established a good relationship with the deputy Mullah Baradar, he's the enemy. And so if this agreement does not work, what is Plan B? Do we continue to withdraw, just saying it didn't work, but so what? What is going to be the cover for this particular operation that comes next? And so I hope I'm sure the administration is thinking about this, because I don't think the Afghan government, given the fact that it's so divided, and given the fact that the Taliban are not a cogent or a coherent single organization, that this agreement can last. And so my guess is that you will find Afghanistan with a government in Kabul and some other major cities, and the Taliban in increasing control of the countryside. We'll see what happens. My guess is we'll also leave a residual counterterrorism force behind to support and train and assist, but also to be there so that there is not going to be a resurgence of Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State. But the situation is desperate. There's no good solution. After 18 years of war, obviously we want to get out, but the biggest slice of society who has suffered through all this, obviously, are the Afghan people, and I'm not sure that relief is in sight.
Let me think out of the box a little bit here as we pass through 934. Suppose, now this is just, I know this is radical, but you can't think of alternatives unless you think outside the box. Suppose that we had just, aside from the evolution of Al-Qaeda and hiding Osama bin Laden, et cetera, suppose we just said, hey, Taliban, you know what, take the whole country, just keep them out of the world affairs. Suppose they took over. What would be the worst effect of that?
Well, they already have been in charge.
Well, okay, but they
Okay, and so there was huge repression against women. Afghans not allowed to fly kites. There was destruction. I mean, the Taliban in charge was catastrophic for the Afghan people because of their prehistoric view of the world.
Yes,
that's what would happen. Okay, the real crisis, or the biggest mistake, was letting bin Laden get away, and I blame Tommy Franks for that, the general in command. We've had this discussion before.
Mm-hmm.
Then Brigadier General Jim Mattis and Bob Harwood, who was a Navy Captain SEAL, had put together this plan to trap bin Laden in Tora Bora, which was the same plan that the U.S. Army trapped Geronimo in the Sierra Madre in 1886.
Mm-hmm.
And because the Marines went in first to Kandahar, and Mattis made some chest-thumping comments the Marines are here, et cetera, Franks took offense, was not going to let the Marines operate, sent in the 10th Mountain Division, which trained at Fort Drum at 600 feet. They were physically unready for high-altitude operations. Bin Laden got away. Supposing bin Laden had been captured or killed then.
It might have been a big difference. Well, the reason I asked that question, and again, I was prepared for the answer that you gave us. Okay. Now, this is harsh, but so what? So what if we have yet another Islamic extreme, although theirs was very extreme, where women are repressed? And I'm not saying I approve of that, but in terms of America's interest in real politics, so what?
Well, the problem here, Bob, is what's called Pashtun-Wala, which is the culture of the Pashtun, which is a majority sect of Afghanistan. And one of the three tenets is hospitality.
Yes.
And so there's absolutely no guarantee that a future Osama bin Laden would not have been harbored by the Taliban.
Okay, well, there you go.
And so the issue is if the Taliban were in charge, there was absolutely no reason to believe that something like this could not reoccur.
Okay,
given the culture, given everything. Now, the Taliban have said they are not going to harbor future bin Ladens. We will see. Do I believe them? No.
Okay, having said that then, aren't we in effect by leaving, creating that opportunity again? And if they do that again, will we go back there?
Well, that's why I say you have to leave some kind of counterterrorism force behind who can operate with the Afghan military, the Afghan special forces, the Afghan police to the degree that they have control to minimize. And I think we have enough intelligence gathering potential and capability so that I think that another bin Laden surviving in Afghanistan is very, very unlikely to occur, provided we keep whatever that minimum level of capability is in country.
Harlan Ullman, before we get into the...
by the way, look,
ahead, please.
This is not new. How many troops do we still have in Germany or in Japan or in Italy? And World War II was over 75 years ago.
Well, that's a good question, but it also begs the answer. That's why we need to keep troops perhaps in different places. Before we get into the third part of this, which will be about the election of our time together, I wanted to just come back to something that we've learned in our conversations with you. And I know it was well intended by neocons. I get it. But how did we ever think that in these parts of the world we could build a democracy? How... there are...
Bob, read my book again.
I know, but I want you to share it.
How America loses every war it starts. I go back and analyze every president from Truman.
Yep.
And in comes Jack Kennedy, will pay any price, bear any burden. Boom, Vietnam. Johnson and Nixon then follow. We don't have a clue. This is an issue of knowledge and understanding, and we fail to have that. We then repeat that in instances where we use force. Even Grenada in 1983, we're going to save the students. The operational commander, Admiral Joe Metcalf, said the students were not in trouble. We went into Grenada in large part because of what happened in Beirut, and 241 Marines and other servicemen were killed.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we have the second Iraq War or Afghanistan. And now you have Donald Trump and his administration who suffer from the same kinds of problems. We have declared in our national defense strategy that our aim is to deter and, if war comes, defeat China or Russia. Would you please tell me how we're going to defeat China in a war because we don't have enough bullets, and how we're going to defeat Russia in a war in which Russian doctrine, as Soviet doctrine stated, nuclear weapons are going to be used? This makes no sense. We want to contain, we want to deter, we want to engage, we want to defend. But this administration has a very belligerent policy in which we are actively saying if we could go to war with China and Russia. That is madness. We don't want to do that, yet we are trying to build forces directed by the strategy to that end. And so you have the Trump administration repeating the same strategic mistakes of lack of knowledge and understanding that Jack Kennedy made, that George W. Bush made, that Ronald Reagan made, and that Barack Obama made or Bill Clinton made in the 78-day campaign against Kosovo in 1999, that should have been over in 27 seconds.
Let's talk about, in this context, and sorry to cut you off there, but George H.W. Bush fought with people you know well, Colin Powell and Dick Cheney, fought that war successfully, and then he pulled out. A lot of the neocons felt he should have gone further. Did he do the right thing? What mistakes did he make?
I mean, just compare him with his son.
Well, yeah.
You know, George H.W. Bush was the last great president we had,
so
and he was not reelected. Mm-hmm. And he was absolutely right. The problem was that the neocons believe, and still do, that democratization is the key to stability, that everybody wants a democracy. Remember what George W. Bush said, we're going in because we're going to impose democracy as a way of changing the geostrategic landscape of the greater Middle East. And he did. It didn't quite work out the way he wanted. There are any number of countries where democracy does not work. It's not going to work in China. It's not going to work in Iraq. It's not going to work in Afghanistan. And it's not going to work in Vietnam. We have to understand that. We don't. We think that we have the universal cure for everything. And we should tend to our own fences here first before we decide to export democracy. Yeah, it certainly worked in Japan, it worked in Germany, but the big differences were that those countries had already been exposed to democracy, and at the end of World War II, they were desperate. We were in complete charge. That was not the case to reoccur. We were never in the same degree of control and charge any place else after World War II.
Harlan Ullman, our guest, we spend an hour with him each and every Wednesday, and those of you listening can see why. Harlan, it's time. We just talked about several presidents. We talked about your book. We talked about something that you and I have always agreed on, H.W. Bush, the most underrated president, certainly of my lifetime, if not of all time. We have, amongst all of this, the coronavirus, the problems with the Taliban, et cetera, and all the other things we discuss every week, we have an election coming up. Joe Biden has, like a phoenix, risen from the ashes, first last Tuesday, and now last night. He's almost certainly going to be the nominee. Where do we go from here? What do the Democrats have to do to defeat Donald Trump, but if indeed they can? And what will the Republicans try to do? But more importantly, how will this crisis now intersect with that evolution, that reality?
Well, as I noted in my column, Walter Cronkite in February 1968, after the Tet Offensive, which, by the way, we won, even though that was not the popular view, said we've lost in Vietnam. And that caused Lyndon Johnson not to seek a second term for office. And so you have these events which really change what happens with presidents. Had there been an election after Hurricane Katrina in 2005, George Bush would not have been elected. So you have these huge events on which presidencies can rise and fall. Jimmy Carter in November 1977 witnessed the Iranian takeover of capture 52 Americans at our embassy in Tehran who were held hostage for 444 days. He launched Desert One in April in 1980. It failed. That contributed to his defeat. What will this happen? Well, if the virus is conquered and the economy turns around and the Dow Jones hits 30,000, Donald Trump will take full credit, and my guess is that could sway the election in his favor. The Democrats have got to do several things. One, they've got to unite around Joe Biden, and they've got to curb the crazy left wing, the Bernie Sanders and the Elizabeth Warrens, and that person from Bronx, AOC, whatever.
Oh, AOC, yeah, we talk about her all the time.
You've got to curb those people because they're outside the mainstream. They will destroy the Democratic Party. So the Democrats have got to unite. They've got to get a huge turnout. And Biden needs something more than anybody but Trump, and that I'm not going to be a revolutionary. I'm going to get results. He needs to have a good team around him. While the pick of a vice president has never made a difference in terms of presidential elections, my guess is he's probably going to go for a woman. The governor of Michigan is probably a good source. She hits 2 or 3 buttons. Unfortunately, she's white. But I don't think he needs to get somebody who's of color because he's pretty much got the black and Hispanic vote on his side. If the virus continues in September, October, we are in a very, very sorry state, then Trump is dead meat. So we'll see what happens. The middle ground that by, let's say, September, the virus has pretty much been controlled, but the economy is still hurting, then my guess is turnout means everything. If Biden can run a good campaign, then I think he could win. But at this stage, Bob, everything is just too uncertain. And you have to realize that I made this point last week. The deal is not done on the Democratic side. Warren and Sanders are going to want to get their pounds of flesh along with the far left wing. You had Jesse Jackson supporting Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
And so the compromises that Biden may have to make, and I hope he does not make any, by the way, have to be worked out. And so even though Biden appears to be the nominee, and I would support Joe Biden, he's a very good man at this stage. I think that's all we can possibly expect. Even though he's 78, I don't think he's running as fast as he once did.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. There was a joke that, well, I must say it was very funny that someone sent me the other day, and it is an image that many people, even those who like Biden, have, and it was actually pretty humorous. Hi, I'm Joe Biden, and I forgot this message.
Yeah.
On the stump, he has given some bad vibes in terms of not holding on to it. Is that simply just him not doing well in these kinds of environments? What is the zeitgeist in Washington? What are people saying?
Well, he's done that throughout his entire career. And if you go back, and this will be held against him, the Clarence Thomas hearings when he was chairman of the Judiciary Committee, I mean, he made a lot of mistakes. So he's gaffe prone. You know, there's also the issue of plagiarism years ago from a speech from Neil Kinnock, who was then the leader of the Labour Party in Great Britain. So Joe has done this. He's 70. He's going to be 78, and usually people of that age tend to slow down a bit. But I think this has been part of him in the sense it's part of his charm. Joe Biden is a nice man. He's the actual person you like to have next door. You want him because he's decent. He understands. He's got good common sense. He is not bound by ego. In many ways, I think he would be a good president. But one has to realize that 78 is not 58, and so that will always be a question. My guess is, if I had to bet, if Biden does secure the nomination, and there is no explosion inside the Democratic Party, these are huge ifs. And if the virus is not resolved within a few months, then I think Biden is very likely to be the next president. But as you see, I have handicapped myself with more ifs than not.
Yes, you have. Harlan Ullman, have we heard the last of Michael Bloomberg, or minimally the last of his money in this campaign?
I hope not. I think Bloomberg is going to turn his resources over to Biden, and I think that's going to be a powerful force because he's certainly well organized. And I think we can expect that. Whether Bloomberg would want anything in return, I don't think so. What does he really need? He's got $60 billion. Does he really want to go into government as Secretary of the Treasury? I think if there were a crisis, however, and let's think forward to October, November, and let's say the virus really is doing a lot of bad things to this country, would Mike Bloomberg serve in a Biden cabinet if it was necessary? I'm sure he would.
Mm-hmm.
I think most Americans would.
Do you know what I got the sense, and now, because we talk a lot of real politics and a lot of policy and everything else, but in terms of true patriotism, I honestly got the sense, and maybe I'm being naive, so stop me, that Mike Bloomberg jumped into this race because of his patriotism. I honestly believe that.
I think he feels that Trump is such a disaster that Trump has to go, and it was worth spending $500 million to make the effort. Of course, he could afford it. it's 120th of his net worth.
I'm thinking of writing him a letter. Hey, if you want to spend another $500 million, I know.
Here's a way to do it. But no, I think so. I think that he thinks that Trump is such an intolerably bad president that there was no other option, and so I'm sure he will support Biden any way, shape, or form he can. But there are a lot of international things going on. This spat between Russia and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that was.
Here's a prediction, Bob.
I'm waiting.
Prediction. The Russians are going to try and undo Mohammed bin Salman and sabotage the administration. They're going to try to do that. What they tried to do with us in 2016. They're going to try to depose MBS in favor of somebody who is much, much more aligned with them. And I'm sure, I have no knowledge, but I would bet a lot of money that the Russian intelligence agencies are already embarked on plans to do just that.
Apropos of this.
And by the way, if I were Putin, I wouldn't blame him.
No, but it depends on where your chips are on the table. As you look at the world, you're out in Hungary. You've been in other places. Some we've not disclosed.
Romania.
Excuse me. You were out in Romania. You've been in many other countries, some of which we haven't disclosed at your request when you were traveling. You're out there on the planet. What is the view of this administration, and what is the view as they look forward to an American election?
The NATO countries, the 29 members, soon to be 30 members of NATO,
yes,
are very suspect of Donald Trump. Publicly, they're not going to say that. They're going to say publicly it's a good thing that Trump forced the NATO alliance to spend $400 billion more over the next 10 years. We needed this, et cetera, et cetera. He's pro-alliance. But privately, they are worried about Donald Trump. They don't believe for 1 second he's committed to the alliance. They think if he wins a second term, the chances are that America will reduce its position. It will rely much more on arms sales. We're selling F-35s to the Poles. They'll want to increase the American presence of American defense items. But people are really suspect. And similarly, particularly in Great Britain, people are really worried about Donald Trump and the impact he's had. So America, the opinion of America and Donald Trump with America first abroad is not what it was. And I think it's generally, and it's hard to generalize, but I think most people who are knowledgeable abroad, and now I am generalizing, are worried and I think are cynical or suspect of Trump's intentions.
Wow, that says it all. Listen, there's so much else going on. We've only got a few minutes left. Anything else in the world we should be keeping our eyes on while we're obsessing about virus?
Yeah, the whole issue of the world economy. As I said, what's happening in Italy and what's happening in Great Britain, I think you may have read that the health minister in Great Britain has contracted the coronavirus. They are probably a month ahead of where we are in terms of how they're dealing or will deal with this. And so keeping an eye on those two particular countries, but how the other countries are dealing with, I think, is important. As I said, the hot zones here are New York, Florida, Washington, and I think by the end of the week you will see some draconian measures taken in the state of Washington. That's something that we need to keep our eye on. Below the radar, and one of the most important things is how we deal with the nuclear issues with Russia. New START, which most people don't know about, but limits strategic nuclear weapons to 1,550 warheads, is about to expire. We have canceled. We've abrogated the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. We could become engaged in an arms race with Russia and the nuclear side.
The larger question there, if I may interrupt, why would we do that? I mean,
because Donald Trump does not have a clue. Let me be very blunt. Look, the Russians may have cheated on the internet in the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Agreement, but they gave us an opportunity to inspect the particular missile that we believe was the violator because of John Bolton, who was then National Security Advisor. He turned down that opportunity. The Russians have said, and technically correct, that we are in potential violation for a few things that are minor that are rectified. We should have pursued that. We walked away from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action with Iran, and guess what? Iran has got more highly enriched uranium. Tell me again why that was the worst treaty in the world. And so we have a problem with a president who doesn't understand. He's surrounded by people who are similar to the neocons. Maximum pressure is going to force Iran to their knees. That's not going to happen. And we will just outbuild the Russians with other weapons, and we will spend them as Ronald Reagan spent them into bankruptcy, which is nonsensical. So
I want to use a sporting analogy. The way you've explained Trump's behavior with respect to START reminds me of a hockey championship I lost, a team that I was running about 10 years ago. We have a 1-goal lead with a minute left, a minute and a half left. And one of my players took offense to something that a guy on the other team did.
Yep.
And wound
penalty
up
box.
And clubbering him. And wound up in the penalty box. They tied it, and we lost because it was about him rather than, hey, we need to suffer this little elbow you took. It wasn't that egregious. Where someone's weak ego wound up hurting the greater good. That sounds like what he did with START.
Well, he hasn't done it yet, but look, there's a rational way to conduct these kinds of policies. If you have a real problem with the intermediate nuclear forces agreement, you say to the Russians, all right, let's sit down, let's talk, let's work this out. We really didn't do that. Similarly, with a joint comprehensive plan of action, you don't threaten and walk away. What you do is you sit down with the Iranians and say, okay, how can we redress these particular issues? And because Trump's business background was you threaten, first of all, you cajole, you try to seduce, and if that doesn't work, you threaten, you bully, you sue. It doesn't work that way with states, especially countries like Iran, who are Persian in culture and who are very proud. And it's an entirely different way of doing business for which he's not familiar. Well, and then when you surround yourself, and look, he's on his, fourth or fifth chief of staff, the third Secretary of Defense, the second Secretary of State. Come on. We're trying to get a new Director of National Intelligence who may not be confirmed. This guy's got no experience, the former ambassador to Germany. I mean, he is. How many national security advisors has he had?
That butt wipe, yeah. Hey, you've been, Harlan, one of the more fascinating things about you is you are, in many cases, on a first-name basis with generals from other countries, including Russia, the former Soviet Union, et cetera. We tend to create caricatures of these people rather than as learned and smart men and capable men. What are they like? What do they like to negotiate with? What do they like to discuss strategy with?
I think that they're terrific. I think pound for pound, they are at least as good as our best. And, for example, when I was in Romania, there's a particular general there, I won't name him. Mm-hmm. His English is better than ours. He's brilliant. We were discussing the future of their National Defense University. And then he was talking about how the Army needs to be brought into the 21st century. And I said, because I was unaware of his next appointment, I said, well, he's going to do that. Who's going to do that? And he said, I am. I'm going to be the next head of land forces. And with the British, their Chief of Defense, General Sir Nick Carter, is one of the most intellectually capable, operationally capable people I've ever met. I put him in the same category as Colin Powell, even though the British military is much smaller. But he follows in a line of Chiefs of Defense. Charles Guthrie was one of the best. David Richards. I mean, these people produce really, and not just the Brits, superior officers. And whether you like it or not, General Gerasimov, who is chief of the Russian General Staff, is an exceptionally capable general. We may not want to admit it, but these guys are good. And we have to realize that, we got beaten by the North Vietnamese. General Giap was a formidable general. He beat the French and he beat us. So we cannot believe that we are always the best and brightest. We have to realize that other countries produce people, even though their countries are much smaller and militarily or economically much smaller than ours, who are enormously capable. And many countries, the best really do go to the military.
This is why I could talk to you for hours, and I know I have to let you go, but whenever I think of Vietnam and I watch documentaries or read books about Vietnam, why have they been more or less so forgiving of what we did there?
Because they beat us. They beat us. And you have to respect that. I mean, we were superior in every degree except will. And that's why John McCain and John Kerry were prepared. Look, John McCain, God bless his soul, was brutalized for 5.5 years, yet he was forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
He was forgiving because you had to respect a country that had the capacity to beat us when in every other category we outnumbered, we had greater technology, and we probably killed 1 million or 2 million of them.
Yeah, and I guess we've always loved the Brits, even after a revolution. Interesting stuff. Harlan Ullman, I can't thank you enough, particularly all the time you spent on placing the coronavirus in perspective here in this country, nationally, and even locally.
Well, we'll see next week, Bob, when we talk, but watch those hotspots.
Well, I am.
And they will be, I think, very illustrative of where we go next.
Well, thank you so very much. Harlan Ullman, everybody. Don't forget to read his column in UPI. And that pretty much does it for today. Now, please, we're here in the belly of the beast. There aren't many cars in the parking lot. Not a lot of people have been going to work today through the train station. As you know, this is Radio Westchester, your radio station in the train station. You've been listening to Mornings. Change the music here for a change. You've been listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he. This is Radio Westchester, the radio station at the train station, broadcasting from the New Rochelle train station, here obviously in the heart of New Rochelle. Thank you so much for listening today. And remember, we'll be back tomorrow at 6:30. You can listen live on RadioWestchester.com. Mornings with Bob Marrone. You can go to the MyTuner Radio aggregator for .com and podcasts and click on either of those. We're also available on Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, iTunes. If I forgot anything, well, you understand. YouTube. I'd like to thank our sponsors today, the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit UHGC.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, plug-in virtual reality. And, of course, our latest edition, the folks over at the Beachmont Tavern. We'd like to thank our guests today. And George Latimer, the callers that came in, thank you so much for telling us what it's like out there. George Latimer, the county executive, gave us a brief on the virus. Ivar Hayden as well. A.J. Woodson from Black Westchester Magazine, and, of course, Harlan Ullman. Now, tomorrow, John Bailey is in the house. Andy Spano, our friends from Choice. And we also have a very fine doctor coming on to talk about the coronavirus. We will keep you informed. Please keep it in perspective, folks. This is going to happen. It's here. We're in the midst of it. We will get through this. Don't think that because the National Guard is here that it's Armageddon. It is not. We need their manpower. All right, have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow at 6:30. I'm Bob Marrone. Thank you for listening.